Yes.
We kind of had a joint question. We are
Good.
actually teachers
Yes.
in a junior high, so we can't bring the, all of this into it, but if you could give any advice to a teacher of how to help these students, because some of them come in angry and,
Of course.
all of that.
Exactly. Well, there's two things, isn't there? We know ourselves. This is part of our inner work at the very beginning. It's so important. We can only really start to ourselves own our own fears and jealousy and depression when we see how it hurts us. But half the time the problem is we get defensive because people always criticize us for being angry and jealous and resentful, and you get told off. So then we get guilty. So then we're defensive. So I think the key thing for us first, when we can see our own regular stuff, we can first see that that's why we're suffering, and that's the really hard one, because what we're addicted to thinking is, well, I'm depressed because the boyfriend doesn't love me, or I'm angry because my mother was mean to me. So we tend to focus on the thing that we think caused it, which diverts us from looking into our own mind. So we can really do that ourselves, then we'll see why we're suffering. And then I think the really next point, then we'll start to realize that's why we that's why we harm others. To whatever degree we harm others, there's no way we harm others if we're feeling loving and kind and generous. It's really kind of no-brainer. Do you understand? So then you can help others, because then you can see that. But the real one is that by having compassion for a person who's crazy and wild and doing dumb things, having compassion because you see they're harming themselves, then when even if you're strict with them, they can trust that it's coming from a real care for them, not just being punitive. That I think is a really powerful point. But the more you are aware of this in yourself, the more, and that's the point here, the more that informs your ability to help others. That's a fundamental. So if you don't know your own mind very well, like parents, what do I do about my angry kid? They don't even know they're angry themselves. And of course, when you're angry yourself, you think it's your kid who's causing it. And then when your kid gets angry, you can see that they make it, so we just don't see that our own anger informs the way the child even refers back to us. So it's so interdependent, We've got to see our own minds well. We've got to know the pain it causes us, which stops us having guilt. And then we have enthusiasm to want to know our mind and change it. And then we can see why we make a mess, and then we can have compassion for others. So that's just the answer. It's the same old thing. Because the more you know yourself, the more that informs your ability to help others. This is really clear. But it's got to come from, when it's kids, and if you're so frustrated and exhausted, it comes from anger, and it comes from sort of using our power to suppress them, But we know that doesn't work. They've got to know you care. And even then, it's not that easy. In other words, there's no quick fix, and don't think you can fix it all. Sometimes you just can't. But I can't imagine being a parent for a start, but then I can't imagine being a teacher. So many different personalities in the same room, my God. Unbelievable. Does it make sense what I'm saying? There's no magic. It is incredible patience. I can't believe it. I have great admiration. Parents and teachers, I think you're incredible. Wow. Yes?
For Dharma practitioners, what would be the most effective way to create a good karma, like doing some virtuous activities?
So, a little bit louder.
Yeah. For Dharma practitioners, so we want to create good karma in this lifetime. So what kind of virtual activities is best to do?
Well, that's what we're talking from yesterday. We start at the very beginning. We live in vows. Were you here yesterday? Yeah, okay. You have to start there. That's Buddha's instructions if you want to be a Buddhist. You start by living a life of virtue, of not harming, in the framework of keeping vows of morality. Then every single second you're keeping vows, like I said yesterday, then you're creating virtuous imprints in your mind, and you're purifying your mind. In fact, as Lama Zopa says, you really can't progress unless you live in vows. So we need to understand we can hear it if we're religious and we hear it, but I think we've got to understand the psychological benefit of it. It's so powerful for Buddhism, for Buddha. Vows are so stupendous. And we can't progress if we don't have vows. Does that make sense? Meaning, in other words, that the point about vows, like I said yesterday, psychologically, It's a technical point. The bottom line, speaking very simply, is that at the time of our death, the key thing at that point is we want to have plenty of delicious, virtuous, karmic seeds easily accessible to us, such that before we die, the virtuous karmic seeds are able to be triggered, which then give us our next decent human birth. That's the bottom line. That's the simplest way of putting it. By the time we die, that's the situation we need. Do you understand my point? Now, so in other words, we've got to find a method in this life to sow as many delicious, strong, non-harming seeds as possible. And that's by living in vows. That's the answer. That's it. There's more, but that's the basis. Without this, every bit of practice you do has no foundation to it. And the reason is this. Okay, again, repeating like we said yesterday. If every single tiny thing we think and do and say, every millisecond, sows a seed, given that, then we obviously want the good seeds, don't we? So another way of putting it is, at the time of death, we want bucket loads of good seeds. Rich, delicious, good seeds. Why? Because they will produce the next decent life, the next good conditions, the next good tendencies. We want that. It's very simple. So therefore, in this life, we have to find the most powerful methods to sow lots of good seeds. So first, the reason why living in vows of morality, not just being a good person, has a huge difference is because of the Buddha's teachings on why of the power of vows. So it's like this. Given that every second we sow seeds, the key factor that determines the character of the seed we plant, which means whether or not it's a virtuous seed, the key factor is the motivation that impels us to do the action. So given that most of us don't have very profound bodhicitta and don't have profound realizations of emptiness, they're the best motivations, the most powerful. Therefore our motivations, our virtues are quite weak. Therefore, if the most things we do that are virtuous, because the motivation is virtuous, but just without vows, they don't have enough power to sow deep seeds. And all that's saying is that our delusions are quite strong. It's not meant to be depressing, it's just a fact. So we need to use special skills to like extra boosters, or extra like, what's the stuff you put on plants to make them grow? What's it called? Fertilizer. To strengthen our virtue day by day. So the Buddha says, every second you live in the vow not to kill, having taken it, and you live in that vow, and you keep it pure, and you purify it every day. 24 hours a day, you're dropping virtuous, non-killing seeds into your bank vault. Without a vow not to kill, it's only when you decide not to kill that you sow a virtuous seed of not killing. So it's a no-brainer that you need vows of not killing. Are you with me? Technically. So you have to have confidence in the system to think that. So you just need to live in vows. Bare minimum, live in vows every day, very sincerely. Don't kill, don't steal, don't jump on the wrong partner, don't take the ungiven, and and the fifth one, if you want, no intoxicants. That's it. If you live in those every day and you attempt to control your body and speech and mind, you do a bit of meditating, you think of the Buddha occasionally, and you do a few good things to people, and you purify at the end of the day, you have a perfect life. Karma takes care, as Lama Yeshe says. You get another decent garden when you die, no problems. You can do more, of course, but that's bare minimum. This is junior school. This is just junior school. Are you with me? Are we communicating? Good. Yeah. Yes, sweetie pie? Yes.
Intention and dedication, are you one of those people that say, set your motivation? And then
Well, I mean, I'm trying
dedicate
to say what I'm taught, so that's what the teachers say, so I need to say them too. But I forget about saying those things. Now, the motivation is what I'm saying. Let's just analyse this logically, not some kind of holy idea, set the motivation. This is really logical. The idea that the key, like I said here, the key factor that determines the character of the actions we do, which in turn determines the quality of the seeds we plant, which in turn determines the fruits, is the motivation. So given that we're ordinary sentient beings who are driven by attachment. Now that always sounds so depressing and heavy, but when we really understand attachment, and we can try and conceive of how we'd be if we didn't have it, then we can get the point. We are all driven by attachment. Our saving grace is our virtue and our kindness, and the fact that we're even in this room indicates we can access our virtue. How fortunate we are. But all the delusions are so pervasive and so habitual that it's a real struggle to make our virtue very strong. So, given that the reason that impels us to say and do something is what a motivation means, that determines whether or not the thing we do and say is virtuous or non-virtuous, we clearly have to have a positive motivation for doing things. So we can generally, like we start the day, now of course they say bodhicitta is the best one. I'm doing this, why? I'm getting up today, why? So I can practice and become a better human being, so I can become a Buddha. I mean, that's your long-term motivation, and that kind of covers everything else. But you can make it in sincere words, whatever you like, you know. So okay, how to say this? It always sounds, I mean, Lama Zopa says, do everything with bodhicitta. Yeah, okay, what's that mean? You know, how can I feel that? You can't. You can't. Because it's way to go, baby. But it's like this. Okay, my analogy is like this. Let's say you decide to be a doctor. For some reason, I always use the example, you go to Nepal, and you go to the mountain, and all these people have cataracts. That's right here, they've got cataracts. And you go, oh my God, look at those cataracts, that's terrible. That's called compassion. But then you go to the next one, which is called great compassion. And that goes, what can I do to help? Now, clearly, the first question you've got to ask yourself is, am I a surgeon? Right? Before you start whipping out your scalpel. And if the answer is no, you don't just go, oh well, can't help it, bye-bye. This is what bodhicitta means. The analogy is surgeon equals Buddha, and I want to become a surgeon equals bodhicitta. So what you've got to do is, I'm not a surgeon yet, but look at all these people suffering, and this is the one, by myself alone is relying upon me. You hope other surgeons will come, but what motivates you to become that surgeon is your sense of urgency, because all these suffering people. So this is heavy to have it. So what do? You can't just leap in and start doing it. You can't just become a surgeon overnight. You've got to go back home and join the university and take a few years, right? Would you agree with me? Now this is the path. This is your practice to becoming a Buddha. Buddha meaning surgeon. It's a simple analogy, but it makes more sense. So what do? You go home. Where do you come? You live here in Virginia? There's a university somewhere, is there around here? What's it called?
George Mason.
Who?
George Mason.
George Mason. So I'm going to go to George Mason, I'm going to become a surgeon. So you join in, what's it going to take you? 7 years, 8 years, 10 years for a surgeon? How long does it take?
The basic is 5 years.
5 years, okay, you've got 5 years. Now,
after medical school.
oh, after medical school. So you've got 10 years then. 10 years?
At least.
At least. Okay, think like this. Of course, we're checking here. So you've got 10 years. Now, this is really hard to think about. I'm sure what motivates a person in the beginning to become a surgeon is because you want to help people. But before long, we can forget our motivation and start doing it for the money or for the prestige, and then we lose the plot, don't we? So here, that's why to remember your motivation every day. So then you get up in the morning and you got to go to George Mason. Now, obviously, the quickest way to become a surgeon is to study day and night. But who's qualified? We've got to have sleep and sex and food, don't we? Do you understand my point? So you have to factor in 10 whole years, including sleep and food and sex. There's a lot of in-between stuff, you know. So you know it's going to take you 10 years. So what do? This is exactly how you think. Your life is like this, in the same way of becoming a surgeon. So you remember these suffering people, and that causes you to want to join George Mason, find the money, pay all the bills, pay all the fees, whatever. So you get up in the morning and you go, oh, I'm going to go to school today. Why? So I can become a surgeon. Why? To help all the poor people with their cataracts. That's bodhicitta. Then you've got to have your breakfast. Why am I eating breakfast? Well, given that I've got to have food because I'm a bit, I've got attachment, why am I eating food? So I can be healthy, so I can go to school, so I can become a surgeon, so I can help sentient beings. That's what bodhicitta means. So then why are you going to the toilet? Because I've got to pee out the other one, so I can have another drink, so I can... Why am I going to have a sleep? Because I'm a bit lazy, I need sleep, why? So I can be healthy, go to school tomorrow. Do you see my point? That's living your life with bodhicitta. So you remember it now. If you started forgetting that you're becoming a surgeon, you've forgotten your compassion, and suddenly something else exciting comes along, then you've lost the plot, you've forgotten. So you've got to remember your motivation. Remember, why am I going to university? Why am I becoming a surgeon? You've got to keep remembering your initial motivation, which is to help others. Otherwise, other things will take over. Then you've got to have a boyfriend because you're lonely. Oh, why am I having a boyfriend? So I can become a happy person, so I can share my thoughts with my other fellow surgeon student, so I can become a surgeon, so I can help sentient beings. It's exactly the same. So you keep remembering it. And that is what causes you to go to George Mason. Is it not true? If you're going to be a footballer, you don't go to George Mason to join the surgery class. What am I doing here? I'm going to go to football. You go to, so wherever your thought is, it leads you to where you got to go. So it's not some holy idea, it's a practical one. So when you go to a Buddha, what do you have to do? Get some wisdom, get some compassion. You do all the practice, you do all the things. Why am I doing this? Why am I going to do my prostrations? Why am I doing water bowls? Why am I wearing Buddhist robes looking like a 14th century person? Why am I shaving my head? Why have I got vows? So I can become a Buddha, so I can benefit sentient beings. That's doing everything with a motivation. Are you with me, people? So you've got to remember it all the time. And of course in the beginning, who has even compassion for anybody? We don't have it. So we've got to remember it and it grows. If you don't remember it, it won't grow. It's very simple. So every time you remember it, that is sowing the seed to become a Buddha. It causes it. You're saying, I want to become a surgeon, so I'll go to George Mason. Causes you to go to George Mason and become a surgeon. What do you think? It's not cosmic. It's common sense. The mind leads you to where you want to go. So you have to remember motivation. Remember your bodhicitta. And then you add your wisdom to it, which is emptiness, which we're going to talk about. And then you've got all the right tools then. Do you understand? Do you understand, people? So dedication, just finishing, dedication just means, all dedication means is, all day at the end of the day, you've got all these seeds, you've done all this work, all this study, you opened this book, done this, passed this exam, blah, 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 and you go, wow, how fantastic, I've sown all these seeds today, and why have I sown these seeds? Based upon my motivation, so I can become a Buddha. So when I'm a Buddha, when I become a Buddha, and that's the end result, I'm going to offer all this to sentient beings. Why am I becoming Buddha? So I can help them. That's your dedication. So your motivation puts you in the right direction, and your dedication reminds you of why you did it, so then you just keep moving on track, not losing the plot. It's practical psychology, but we don't hear it like that. We hear it like religion, you know. You with me, people? Yes, Ben.
No, I mean, I need to move your chair forward.
You're getting nervous I'm going to fall off?
Yes.
Oh, I know. People are always nervous when you fall off. I did one time in Stockholm. It was like a comedy. I fell backwards. My legs flying, the plants flying, people hysterical, having panic attacks. I just laughed, apparently. No, I said, as I fell and bounced on my head, I said, I'm glad my head is strong. But I was fine, you know. So what do you want me to do?
We just need to slide it forward a little bit.
I'll just get off then.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, look, I've got a long way to go before I
I
come.
know you did.
Better safe.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Sorry, and now my leg is a bit weak because of the meniscus. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Okay, are we communicating here? Are we communicating? It's hard work. You've got to remember these boring things, you know, kind of exhausting. It's up to us. If we want to do it, then we have to do it. Okay, what else? Yes.
Yesterday you spoke of consciousness, our individual consciousness, we can track it back.
Yes.
Is that part of universal consciousness? Are we all part of a river of consciousness?
No, we're not.
No.
I mean, okay, put it like this. Okay, so put it like this. Okay. Well, yes and no. Let me explain. Of course it sounds cosmic to us because we're used to just thinking about the brain. And of course, you know, brains don't merge and become oneness with other brains, do they? So it's kind of weird to talk about a mind and universal blah, blah, blah. So the point is this. At the moment, because of delusions, we are separate rivers of mental moments. We are separate mental continuums. We are separate. And that's pretty evident. If you sit there and play the piano every day, you sow the seed in your mind, and that brings the result of you being good at piano, doesn't it? Would you agree? So that's clearly proof that my mind is not your mind, because I don't get the benefit. I don't play piano when you study. I mean, it'd be very great if I did. Do you understand? I get the benefit? No. And the same if you're angry, I don't get the benefit. I don't get the suffering of that. So our minds at the moment are individual because of delusions. So as we progress and lessen delusions, we are also breaking down the barriers that the delusions have created. And eventually, by the time you're a Buddha, you cut all delusions from your mind. So literally, your mind, I'm still here deluded. But your consciousness now, it's like for you in your mind, there's no longer a sense of being a separate self. Your mind is as vast as the universe. you know, you have a sense of connectedness with every single sentient being as if they were you. And you know their minds perfectly and have infinite compassion for every one. So your experience would be as if you were oneness with them all. But I'm still sitting here being miserable and, you know, not having, I have no sense, I haven't merged with you. I've got to do that work. But the other way to put it, when Aurelio becomes a Buddha, and you become a Buddha, you might as well say then you are the same consciousness. There is only one Buddha. There is only one God. The way the Christians talk, there's many similarities in the teachings. That's my sense, you know, look over the years, all the different cultures, many humans have come up with different views and seen many similarities. So the Christian idea of God being, God pervades the universe, God has infinite wisdom, infinite power, infinite compassion. They're the three characteristics of a Buddha. The difference is Buddha says everybody can become one, and you're not created by one of them. It's a big difference. But it's similar qualities, you know, similar qualities. So when you're a Buddha and he's a Buddha, it's like you'd be at the level of actual, okay, the actual word Buddha refers to unmanifest, all-pervasive, all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-powerful consciousness. Your mind, when it's perfected, is literally pure consciousness. You don't need bodies. You've gone past needing bags of bones. But you manifest in bodies. So there are billions of bodies of Buddhas, billions of individual Buddhas in different bodies. But when your consciousness and his consciousness are both enlightened, it's the same consciousness. You might as well say you're the same then. But there's no one kind of, you don't, the Christian teaching is there is always God and we kind of merge with God. It's a bit different way of putting it, not like that.
Is that also the definition of non-duality?
Finally, when you are a Buddha, you have an experience of non-duality. There's no longer a separate sense of me, you, no longer subject, object, none of that stuff. Yeah, that's right, exactly. I gave a talk at the Catholic University in Melbourne a few years ago, a little 20-minute slot to say something, and even until I got there that morning, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. So I looked up the Merriam-Webster dictionary for the definition of God. And it was those three qualities. Omniscience, meaning, in Buddhist terms, this is the key point about it. This is why we get to emptiness now. The point of the Buddha's point is, when mind is totally purified, when mind is completely non-deluded and fully developed in all the qualities, it literally is in sync with that which exists. It knows that which exists, and that's what they mean by omniscience. That's what wisdom is. Buddha says every mind has that potential, literally, and there's real logic to it, but that takes us time to see. The second quality is infinite compassion, no longer a sense of a separate me, infinite empathy and love and compassion for every being as if they were you. And the third is on the basis of this infinite power to do whatever needs to be done to benefit every single sentient being. So that's my talk was the similarity between the definition of God and Buddha. I don't know if the Catholics liked it, but that was my talk. So, yeah, are we communicating here? What else, people? Any questions? So we just finished the verses, and then we're going to talk about emptiness, which is affecting wisdom. So we didn't go through any of the 11 techniques, just the first one. Then we leapt to the end result. And so here, what's your password? Your thumb, okay. Oh, no, I don't have passwords. I think it's people want my iPad. They're very welcome to it. Nothing to hide. Okay, the last two verses, the last three, 2, 6, 7, 8, 3, 2. In brief, directly and indirectly, I'll offer help and happiness to all my mothers, and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. This is the source of Tonglen. The practice called Tonglen, giving and taking. And that's the essence of this whole approach. That's the last stages of this 11 steps that culminate in bodhicitta. This amazing, outrageous practice that can be done formally in meditation, but in fact it's just an attitude that you cultivate, which is all these verses are leading to it. Where you meditate formally. You can, using your breath. A simple way to do it would be you visualize a person in front of you. You start with your beloveds who've got a headache. Something simple. When you breathe in, this is called taking. So you imagine breathing in with your breath their suffering. like yucky smoke. And you can visualize there's all sorts of ways you can do this. You like visualize a little rock at your heart, which is your self-centeredness, your self-cherishing, your ego grasping. And you imagine breathing in their suffering and kind of, putting it like an atomic bomb on your self-cherishing. And then when you breathe out, like radiant light, you imagine giving them your happiness, your quality. So what's the meaning of this is this. So love is the thought, may you be happy, the delight in someone's happiness. Then if you like, the next level, the powerful one of the Bodhisattva, the action level is, you can call it great love. What can I do to give people happiness? So here, you're practicing giving this person all your happiness. And when you do the breathing in, you're practicing taking upon yourself their suffering. So that's compassion. Compassion is, oh my God, look at that suffering. Great compassion is, what can I do to take it away? So Tonglen is like a sort of bonus on top. Not only, oh my God, look at that suffering. Not only what can I do to take it away, but you know what, babe? I can handle it. I'd rather have it than you. So it's this outrageous paradigm shift that you make, where you think, I would rather have the suffering than you. Now the reality is this meditation, again, like I said before about these techniques, these are for our sake. Don't hear, this technique is not you're trying to get a headache for a start. That's ridiculous. Second, it is not a healing technique. Really hear this. This is not for the sake of the other person. It's got nothing to do at that moment with the other person. It's you using this person's suffering as a means for you to have the courageous attitude that I would rather take it on if I could. And that very attitude is what puts an atomic bomb on delusions. So it's a skillful, powerful method. And then, of course, the end result of that is that that's exactly what you will do in real life. You're training. So these meditations are training. We're very addicted to believing these meditation is all about getting an experience. It's called practice. It's training. You practice Mozart 8 hours a day, then you do the concert. You practice. These are practices. And the result is the method. This method is a way to really put atomic bombs on delusions, which is the whole point. And this is what culminates in bodhicitta. Yeah.
Well, if I know I'm not going to get the headache, I'm going to be a lot braver about trying.
Bit louder, darling.
I said, if I know I'm not going to get the headache, I'm going to be a lot braver about trying that.
But the aim isn't, why would you think, no, okay.
So I'm not
No. But the aim isn't to get the headache.
Right, I understand.
And the aim isn't to suffer. The aim is to have the courageous view that if there were a person there who's suffering, I would rather have it than them. So what that means is, the bottom line of this is, not that you want to get a headache, the bottom line is that it will cause you to have such courage in real life. When a person is suffering, you'll jump in front of them in the car. And I'm going to tell you a story now. That's the point about it. It's training you to have the courage to be brave enough that if you could, you would rather take it upon yourself. So this is a story I always tell, perfect example, our friend Harry. He's an American fellow who was a monk for a while, he's now a layman, and he's a meditator. And everyone says, oh wow, Harry's a bodhisattva, you know. You must know him, up in the mountains, wherever you are, not in the mountains. Where? Crestone. I heard you have yaks there.
Yes.
You do, apparently. Anyway, Harry's meditating up in Crestone now, with Mary, their partners. So the thing is, Harry, you know, when you meet Harry, people say, oh, he's a bodhisattva. Well, he's like this, maybe he's lost weight now, he's always this happy, jolly, fat fellow. He looks like Father Christmas. He looks like Santa Claus, you know, with a big beard and a happy, jolly fellow. Well, everyone says he's a bodhisattva. Well, I don't know. What is a bodhisattva? They're nice, happy people, you know. Now, this story seems to me, kind of proves maybe he might be. And I like this story. And he told me the story very happily. He wasn't being arrogant. But I think it's very helpful for us to hear it. So anyway, one time he was in Koban Monastery, our monastery in Kathmandu, Lama Zopa's monastery. He's the same one that was helping the monk who, remember the monk I mentioned about? Who died young, and he was helping the monk. So anyway, Harry was there, and he was getting ready to go up to Laudo. He's got up in the mountains. He had a cave up there. He's got a cave up there still. It's up where Lama Zopa came from his past life, up where we do our trek. Those on my advertisements. There's a postcard down there called Laudo Trek. The fourth year, we do every year. We go up there. We need to go up there to Lama Zopa's cave, about 14,000 feet up, And we do a retreat up there, and also some of the money goes to raises money for the projects up there. And then the other advertisement is me with an elephant down there. It says 2001 I've been leading a pilgrimage to India and Nepal, to all the places of the Buddha. And it's about my 17th, I never get bored. It's amazing, I can't tell you. And it raises money for the prison project. So the postcard down there with the elephant. That's me and the elephant. So then, 2 more ads. Sorry, there's a poster down there. There's a poster down there of a CD and a DVD that, I mean, I know nobody has DVDs and CDs anymore, they're a bit old fashioned, but people still seem to buy them, it seems. And they raise money for My Body Teacher Trust. And one is a CD I did, a bunch of prayers. It's like a choir of Rabinas. My friend did all this production, you know, you'll see it. My mother taught me singing when I was a kid. So it's like an offering to her. So then the other one is, what is the other one? Oh, a movie my nephew made many years ago about me. So there you go. It's all about me, I'm sorry. So there's an advertisement down there. If you want to buy them, you can. Okay, so the Laudo, up in Laudo, Harry had a Kate up there. So he's getting ready to leave Kathmandu to go up there to do some meditating. And Lama Zopa was there, and he had a dream, he said, that Harry would die, so to tell Harry not to go. But Harry had left, and they didn't have cell phones in those days. So he then instead told Geshe Lama Kontrok, this outrageous holy being, that a Serajay monk who left Tibet when he, went 59, went up to the mountains and meditated for many years where Milarepa meditated. And he lived up there with no clothes. He was a Vajrayogini practitioner. He lived in Vajrayogini's pure land, Lama Zopa said. Geshe Lama Kontrok, his name is. Geshe Lama Kontrok. Did he ever come here? No, you don't know. Anyway, he was very tall for a Tibetan, and he was very rough because he lived naked with no food and no clothes for many years in a little cave in the mountains, 6 foot of snow in the winter. Because why? Because he's got complete control over all his energy, complete control over his system, his body and mind, and he was living in Vajrayogini's pure land, meditating day and night, becoming a Buddha, right? So this astonishing being. So eventually he came to Kopan. And when he first came, they told me that he thought he was this country bumpkin. He was very tall, very gruff looking. I mean, you're living in the snow naked, you'd be very rough looking, wouldn't you? So he looked like a country bumpkin. People had no idea he was Vajrayogini, He didn't look like Vajrayogini at all. She's this cute, naked red lady, Nothing like that. He scared the life out of people. He was so grumpy. It was very amazing. So anyway, all the lamas at Kopan adored him. He was so special, so amazing. And when he passed away, 2001, Lama Zopa said, oh no, that's the wrong story. Oh, when he came to Kopan, that's right. Soon after Lama Yeshe passed, when Lama Yeshe passed away, Lama Zopa said all the smiles at Kopan went away. But when Geshe Lama Kontrok came, all the smiles came back. Anyway, he passed away in 2001. So up there he was, they're both at Kopan at the time, Lama Zopa and Geshe Lama Kontrok. So Harry had left, and Lama Zopa asked Geshe Lama Kontrok to pray for Harry, because he couldn't get a message not to go. So then anyway, then I heard about this story that someone who was with him told, so I asked Harry to verify it. And this is what he told me. He's walking up these very, these mountains, and they're rough up there, I tell you. I nearly fell off and I got knocked over by a yak. Luckily I got saved. But anyway, the point is, Harry had to take this side path at some point because some big rock fall came, and it was very treacherous. And you see these porters, these unbelievable, these Sherpas, they're unbelievable what they do. These little skinny kids with their little flip-flops. Oh, we wear all our mountain boots looking fancy, And they carry like 60 kilos on their back. And they've got this strapped around their forehead, and all they do is have their head bent, and they see their feet. All they do is see their feet, Unbelievable what they do, unbelievable. So these porters, suddenly Harry's going up this tricky little piece of path, he's got his 25-kilo pack on, and there's these 4 short Sherpas coming down. And it was very intense and very quick and it's really serious because the porters fall off all the time. And Harry, so what happened was he saw the 4 Sherpas coming, and he said, and this is exactly what happened, he said to himself, 4 of them, 1 of me, okay, I'll step to the side. Now, I didn't go on about that, but there's all these different talk in this whole genre of practices in the way to try and get ego to realise it's just nothing and going to put others first. You use the logic to argue with ego that wants always to be me first. Well, there are 4 people, 4's more than 1, I'm 1, therefore they're more important. I mean, ego doesn't like that, but it's logical. But $4 or 1, or everyone was always 4, it's more important than 1. So Harry stepped to the side, by the edge of the cliff. And normally, of course, we would think, believing Mr. Darwin, that we've got instinct for survival, so naturally we'll go back to the cliff, back against the cliff, hoping that they won't fall off, but it's not our fault if they do. Naturally, we would think that. That's normal. Because we call instinct for survival this sensible thing that rises up, that makes us do the right thing so we don't sort of fall off the cliff. No, Harry stood on the edge of the cliff. And then even in a second, he could see it was so intense, then he said to himself, if they knock me, I won't hold on. So they knocked him. And he didn't hold on. And his feet are on the ground, and his pack is pulling him back. And it's a 1,000-foot drop. And he said, I had a psychic vision of the entire fall. I saw my body crash to the ground. And then he felt the hands of Geshe-la pushing him very forcefully, and he reversed direction and fell back into the Sherpas, Well, that's, first of all, the first part of the story shows that if you haven't done training for years and years and years, of wanting to benefit others, of practicing having bodhicitta, of wanting to take upon the self of others, suffering of others, there's no way you would spontaneously even have the thought, I'll stand at the edge of the cliff. Second, absolutely no way, if they knock me, I won't hold on. In other words, you can't cut out the cataracts of a person overnight. You have to study for 10 years. So same here, training. He spent years and years in meditation training. So the bottom line is, the proof of the pudding is, that situation arises, no second thought. He put them first. That's the result. Not just in your meditation you have a few tears. That's the result of practice, years and years of practice. Counteracting the instinct that I'm first, But the other part is, Geshe-la Courtin, even the lowest level bodhisattva, there's 10 stages of development to become a Buddha. From the time you first become an Arya Bodhisattva. An Arya Bodhisattva is a Bodhisattva who's realized emptiness. From this first second of realizing emptiness, you then go through these 10 stages over many lifetimes, they say. You can speed it up by practicing Tantra, which is postgraduate. We might just whiz that in at the end of the day. So, what I said, I distracted myself. 10 stages, thank you. So then, it's 10, and so as you progress, you get more powerful, more amazing, more wisdom, more this, more capable, more power, more power. So even lowest level bodhisattva has the power, the capacity, and all of this is logic based upon the stuff that we're talking about here by reading the text. This fits in this system, you understand? It's got its own internal logic. They're capable of manifesting their own mind in 100 forms simultaneously. In other words, you see, when we understand, this is what we learn in the Vajrayana, and I find this very helpful, to understand that the universe is made of the 4 elements. The universe is made of matter and minds. That's it. And it happens to be, from the Vajrayana point of view, this way of describing the universe, matter and all minds, these trillions of sentient beings, are inextricably linked to our own set of the 4 elements. This is the Tibetan medical system. This is the Vajrayana model. This is similar to the Chinese one. So when your Tibetan doctor feels your pulses, what she's feeling, she studied all for years and years, all these different wind energies, which of course is not the health system we use now. We don't talk about the 4 elements any longer, we have all these other elements. But she'll feel your pulses, and she'll feel the different wind energies coursing through these 72,000 subtle channels in your body. And all these wind energies all are linked to your different states of mind. This is really not how we talk. It's obviously a very different system. She can tell exactly which winds related to anger, to jealousy, to this. They can tell your karma. There's a phenomenal system. It's a phenomenal system. Because it's integrated, the body and the mind. So the universe is made of the 4 elements. All minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the 4 elements, which is why every single thing we think and therefore say and do impacts upon the winds, which is our body, and then in turn impacts upon our mind. And this is how we can understand environmental karma. So as Lama Zopa says, in the Kala Chakra Tantras, there are these deep Tantra, there's these detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between internal and external energies. Internal is minds, external is the elements, is the physical universe. As Rinpoche said, if the mind is angry, that's related to its own particular wind energies. That pollutes those winds, which in turn karmically causes you to be sick. Not just now, but in future lives. And then in turn, even furthermore, karmically, impacts upon the external elements, which is what eventually, karmically, and this is talking about thousands of lifetimes, is causing the imbalance of the external elements, like volcanoes and floods and fires, when all the elements are out of whack, not behaving properly. Because so in other words, the external environmental karma is the karmic result of the actions of those sentient beings from like 1,000 lifetimes ago, where even now the environment is manifesting our own past negative karma. So the mind runs everything in Buddhism. The mind is the creator of everything, even the physical universe. It doesn't create the elements, they're there. But the impact, the way the elements manifest is dependent upon upon mind and actions, karma. This is the Buddha's view. So what am I saying here? So I said that because why? What was I talking about? Where was I?
Virginia.
Huh?
Virginia. You're in Virginia.
I know, but why was I saying this? What was I on about before? Harry?
Yeah.
Become control? Oh yeah, bodhisattvas. So when your mind is really, so right now our mind is stuck in this body because we've got massive ego grasping, unbelievable attachment to this bag of bones. I mean, don't we? Even if we're the ugliest thing in the universe, we are so attached to our own body, just naturally. So we can't see past our own noses. We live at a level of conceptuality. We remember a few thoughts a day. And what we do remember is distorted by our delusions. We don't remember most of today's thoughts. Forget about a past life. What a joke. Because our minds are so limited, driven by our conceptual stories and driven by ego grasping and all the delusions. So as they're gone, when they go, your mind is more powerful. Your mind literally expands, which is why you can have clairvoyance, because you're removing the obstacles out of the way that prevent you from seeing the past and the future and the minds of others. And that enables your mind to easily use the elements of the universe to manifest new bodies. No problem. A minimum 100 forms simultaneously. As you progress, it's billions. And there's a lovely story about the Dalai Lama I always tell too. They all say he's the Buddha. We hear that, don't we? Well, we don't know. Unless you're clairvoyant, you can't tell. It's good to practice he's the Buddha. That's a different discussion. But there's a lovely story Lama's overtold. Soon after they came out of Tibet, all the lamas, His Holiness and all the lamas, really had a sense of urgency to try to get land in India where they could continue their monasteries, because they wanted the oral lineages not to die out, because there's a whole oral tradition. If the oral lineage dies out of anything, you've lost the plot, it just becomes myth. Anything. I mean, if people stopped making cakes and all we had left was a few pictures, you wouldn't have cake making anymore. It's a living tradition going back thousands through mummies and, mummies mostly. Now, never mind. So anyway, it's oral lineage, okay, oral lineage. So they needed the monastery. So the kind Indian government was negotiating with them to have thousands of acres of forest down south, which is now like little Tibet. And this is in the very early 60s, so there's a sense of urgency to get this done, So His Holiness had sent his particular Tibetan minister to Delhi, where all the government is, 12 hours down from the mountains, from Panthankot, where you get the train up there, So he had a meeting with the Indian minister and he couldn't get the meeting. He was frustrated, went back up to Dharamsala, told His Holiness, and His Holiness basically said, it's okay, it's cool, go back down. So he went back down to Delhi, and then that day, the particular Indian minister was in the office and he had his little boy with him, his son. So the little boy was chatting to the Tibetan, and the little boy mentioned he wanted a dog. Well, the Tibetan was delighted, I'll get you a dog. He was kind of delighted to grease the wheels. So he went outside and there was a sadhu with a dog. Can I buy your dog? Yep. So he bought the dog, gave it to the little boy. Little boy's happy, he runs to daddy, daddy's happy, everything works. Meeting happens and things move forward. So as Lama Zopa said, the sadhu and the dog are manifestations of the Dalai Lama's mind. So if he's a Buddha, then he's manifesting at this second. We see this nice Tibetan fellow, don't we? This gentleman up there in his robes looking holy. But that's just that's the manifestation we see. At this moment in time, if this stuff is all true, which we have to find out, his mind is manifesting right this second in countless bodies throughout every realm of existence, continuously in one form or another, effortlessly, based on infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, and infinite power. That's what a Buddha is. So, the point about this is, as the Tibetans have a lovely saying, and even with a fellow who ran his horse over the lady's garden, you wouldn't have seen a nice fellow with a halo walking through a garden. No, you would have been a naughty fellow and thrown him out. Isn't it? Well, the same here. You would see a dog and a sadhu. So, we all think our pets are like Buddhas. Everybody I know who's got a pet thinks they're a Buddha. Never mind. But we think they've got to be cute and nice. Well, this dog might have been a mean dog. But he wouldn't have been like he wouldn't have looked like the Dalai Lama. He wouldn't have been kind of winking at you from the corner saying, I'm really the Dalai Lama. Wink, wink. He wouldn't have a halo. He would have looked like a dog, sounded like a dog, peed like a dog, acted like a dog. And no one in a billion years would ever know who is anything other than what it appears. And that's the grossest of the gross ignorance we have because of ego grasping, we see everything through the lens of our own delusions, and then we believe it's that. That's the absolutism. That's the nihilism of our view. This is the way we see it, and there it is. Ego grasping. We're going to get there eventually. So these bodhisattvas, I mean, Sato having compassion. Lama Zopa asked me recently, do you talk about bodhicitta? And I just blurted out. No, it's too heavy for me. I can't cope. It's true. I'd rather talk about karma all day. I can handle that. I can handle emptiness. I can handle delusions. Bodhicitta scares the life out of me. It's too intense. Are you with me, people? I know I sound ridiculous, but hear my point. We love so much love, compassion, poor little animals suffering. Bloody hell, you know, come on. Whew. Yes, Aurelio.
Would you say a bit more about the bodhicitta in terms of how it's scary?
Just think of something. Okay, Aurelio, if you're really trying to do it, that means you would be happy when you're miserable. You'd be glad when you get pain. You would love it when people are mean to you. You'd rather live with a person you hate than a person you love. You'd be an amazing, outrageous, over-the-top, insane person. Is that not heavy? And you can manifest a million forms simultaneously. For the sake of every being, you'll be a hell being, you'll do anything. Is that not insane? That's what I mean. That's intense. Because, do you get my point? I'm sorry to make you nervous. Any questions here? So anyway, that was the point about Tonglen. It's training in your meditation, and then you can do what Harry does. No props, you know. Yes?
Okay, I was doing for a couple of days Lojong or
Tonglen, that's the one I'm talking about.
When the people have pain and you get everything, they suffer from it.
Why were you doing it?
Because I was practicing.
But why were you doing the meditation? What was the purpose?
Because I don't like, everybody suffer.
Okay, so that's not the reason.
Right, okay. No,
So what were you doing the meditation for?
One is Tonglen and the other is Zhonglong.
Lojong is the general name. It means mind transformation that refers to this entire method of practicing, all these different practices. But you're talking about the breathing meditation of breathing in suffering.
Oh, okay.
That's Tonglen.
Tonglen, when you
So tell me why you decided to do it.
Because I was reading and everything, I want to meditate and take the pain, like you say, like for mothers, or for my mother, take the pain, or for the sick people to do.
Okay, so what you mean is you wanted to do the meditation because you didn't want your mother to suffer.
Right.
Okay, well technically that's not the point of this meditation.
Okay.
It's not a healing meditation for your mother's sake. This is the one I'm trying to say, which always sounds peculiar to us. Okay, listen to me. Okay. The aim of this meditation is not to heal your mother. There's many meditations you can do to actually help your mother. Pray to the medicine Buddha. Do medicine Buddha visualize light from the medicine Buddha going to your mother and taking away her suffering. What Tonglen specifically is a method, a technique for you to practice the intense wish that if you could, you would rather have the suffering than others. So then you'd do what Harry did. You'd give his life for others. So the point of it is because your compassion is huge and you see all these people suffering and you want to become a Buddha, so you do Tonglen to help you become a Buddha. The aim isn't right there to heal your mother. That's a wonderful idea.
Right. I try to do that to be right, for be a Buddha, trying to do that meditation.
So what's your question?
When I try to do for people that I know they are very sick, I really like when you breathe in, you breathe the sickness to you, like to me, me, and later I give you the good, when I breathe out, I give you the good energy and everything. So I don't need to any empowerment or something to do that meditation?
Well, I would have said, wouldn't I, otherwise? I would have mentioned that if we did. That's what I just described before, that meditation, didn't I? Okay, well, you're saying the same thing as you said before. And that's okay, because you're driven by the wish for her not to suffer. So that's very powerful. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is, again, if you want to actually help the sick people,
Right.
you wouldn't just do Tonglen. That's to help you become more courageous. and driven by compassion to want them to not suffer, to want them to be happy. That's powerful. But you'd also do other practices which can be directly beneficial, like you'd request the Buddhas to help them. You do medicine Buddha, you'd say mantras, you'd have pujas done for them. That's where you invoke the Buddhas to do their job to help others. Are you seeing my point? Okay, good. What else, people? Any questions? We can talk about getting wisdom now. So so pretend we've now got bodhicitta. So first we've got renunciation, now we've got bodhicitta, and now we do the next final stages of our path, which is now where we perfect the 6 practices called the 6 perfections. The first 4 are where we perfect the compassion wing, and the last 2 are where we perfect the wisdom wing. The first 4 are these practices. They talk about the practices of the bodhisattva. Practice generosity, morality, patience, and perseverance. So it says, and this is over many lifetimes. Having accomplished bodhicitta, you now go to this next stage where you're perfecting life after life, connecting with sentient beings, and practicing at different levels, all these different practices, as many commentaries on all of this stuff. So the essence of generosity is the practice of the 3 levels of generosity: giving material things, giving spiritual advice, and giving protection. Well, of course, the first one is meant to be the easiest, and the second is more difficult, but for us, giving advice is easy. Giving dollars is not easy. We give advice to anybody, whether we're qualified or not. So giving is a very powerful practice, but we won't go into that too much. Very powerful, because it's the stepping stone into, it's really practicing, realizing your job, because the job, you see, the job description of a bodhisattva is, it's my job to help people. It's like a mother, she doesn't look at her child and wonders who's going to feed them. The kid's drowning, and I wonder who's going to save my kid. You're in that water whether you can swim or not. That's bodhisattvas. So the generosity is, again, continuing. All these practices are really continuing to chip away at this sense of a separate self. Because when we know about giving, we don't like to give. We have mine. The ones we do give to are our people. And if we do give things, it's usually when you buy a new coat, so you give your old coat to somebody. You don't buy a new coat and give the old coat, you keep the old coat yourself. We're happy to give, but again, it's very limited. And in general, when it comes to money, because it's a very vivid measurement of stuff, isn't it, that we use in our culture, it's very powerful. We reconcile every dollar. We get nervous if we can't. So we don't want to give too many away because we think we're going to lack them. But what we realize is this, what we've got to realize, first, to get a human body, we need the morality of non-killing, practice in the framework of non-killing vows. That is the cause of getting a human mother. But live to be born like we are in the minority of this planet, in a good situation, in a good country with reasonable politics and reasonable money and reasonable wealth and reasonable health and access to this and that, that's the miracle. That's because of generosity. The fact that we can even have access to 1 grain of rice is the karmic result of our generosity. And indeed, of course, not stealing. So generosity and morality are the 2 main causes of getting a decent human life. Just to get the conditions in which you have the luxury to then have it so we can come for a weekend to something like this. If you had to work 18 hours a day for a bowl of rice, no luxury. That's because of generosity. So even for our own benefit, to realize the power of generosity is incredible. The necessity for generosity, giving. So we have to practice it. We have to practice it. So whom do you give? Whom do you give to? People who need money, people who need things. So, giving things. Giving money is a very powerful, because money is the major measurement we use. You don't give sacks of rice any longer, or cows. We give money, we receive money. So we have to learn to factor it in. And there are various practical methods we can use, to practice generosity. We can't just say I'm a generous person and be stuck there, or I'm not generous. We've got to practice it, which means do it. So how do you practice generosity? Well, there's lots of methods, simple methods. You factor it, you put a line item in your budget, like the Mormons. If you don't budget for it, it won't happen, I promise. But we budget for a phone, we budget for rent, we budget for the children's this and for that, and the 501, not the 501, the 40K or something, whatever those things are. You get my point. We know what we have to have our money for. So you force yourself to budget in, called giving. Get your tax break, no problem. Nothing wrong with that. But you've got to put it in there. If you don't, you won't give. We'll only give when we've got nothing left. When everything's done, we will then give. And we certainly don't like giving if we get nothing in return. But we've got to practice it. It's just very sensible. And so then one of the easy ways to give, of course, is give it to homeless people. But we don't like that because they're smelling, make us nervous, these people. They could be drug addicts. How do we know, Well, excuse me, it's not your business. Like if when you get paid for your job, you have an agreement with your boss. You do your part and they will give you money. They don't start telling you how to spend your money, do they? You'll be very insulted. Well, don't buy drugs, Robina, and don't buy alcohol. Then I'll pay you. No, you do your job, they'll pay you money. Well, the same with a homeless person. I think when I meet a homeless person, I have an agreement in my mind. They want something and I decide to give it. No strings. Just give. Practice giving. It's my practice. Give, And don't give 50 cents. We'd have done that in the 1920s. $5, $10 minimum. We're so mean, it's shocking to do this. But we analyse it already, we're already giving all the time. I walk into Starbucks, I pay my $10 for a cake and a coffee or whatever. Now if you analyse it, you know that whatever it is, 20%, 30% is pure generosity. You're giving them profit. We don't mind. We don't say, I'll only pay for the cost, you give me the change please. No, we're happy, we know that commerce includes profit. That's called generosity. You're giving a donation to Starbucks. But what about the homeless person outside? You get nothing in return, so we don't want to give. Our minds are like this. So we've got to practice. We've got to practice giving what we don't want to give. It's very obvious. It loosens the grip of miserliness, Or sometimes we might be generous, but then we don't pay our student debts. Okay, negotiate with the banks, please. The student debts are terrible in this country, I agree. It's shocking. But don't just let it go. We think, oh, well, the banks don't care. It's just they're rich anyway. That's heavy duty. And the point is here, it's not a question of the banks wanting your money or not. It's a practice that we have to cultivate to want to give, to want to pay every cent of debt. Negotiate. Do what you can. But have the attitude of wanting to give. As Lama Zopa said one time when, don't think, bodhisattvas, don't think of receiving. Think of giving. This is really powerful, and we must practice it because we don't want to give, only to our friends, only when the sun's left over, only when it suits us. This is natural. Everyone's like this. Another way to practice giving, this sounds hilarious. It starts with the mind, like everything, it starts with the mind, right? Well, like in old-fashioned days, when you have a letterbox, a mailbox, we call them here, don't we? You'd get two envelopes, and one is a bill and one is an invoice. One is a bill and one is a check. Now, I don't think I've ever met a human being on this earth who, when they get a bill, goes, wow, fantastic, I must pay it straight away. And I've never met a person yet who gets a check and goes, oh, no. Because why? We love receiving and don't like giving. Well, how about changing your mind? The point about this is hilarious. We have to pay the bill no matter what. Well, why be miserable? I mean, you've got to pay it. Why be miserable? I mean, talk about blocking receiving if we don't even want to pay the debts we owe. I mean, we're hilarious. So start having a happy mind about paying bills. I merely mean this serious. It's a profound view. We put the bills off as long as possible. Then we blame the bank for charging us extra because we don't like paying even our bills. I mean, we've got to realise this is destroying our mind and this is preventing us from receiving. So the attitude of wanting to give, this is not some kind of naive, childish thing, it's intelligence. So want to pay your debts. You owe them anyway. Why be miserable? It's absurd. It's already powerful, changing your mind, becoming generous. Then the next one is called, and that's just the first kind of giving. The next one is called morality. Well, the whole path is a path of morality. But here in the first stage, like we talked, you've got the morality of restraint, refraining from harming, which is the basis of all of our practice. Now we have the morality of benefiting others. It's just increasing generosity. Generosity is the first step, and now this is just help, not just giving, but helping others, recognizing it's my job. So to the extent of our ability, of course. And there's lots of commentary on all this. The third one is called patience. This is like a dirty word for us, Because I think what we think of patience is basically passive aggression. Kind of gritting your teeth, waiting for that horrible thing to go away. It's ridiculous. That's aggression. That's anger. That's aversion. So patience is really an amazing quality if we understood it properly, logically, psychologically. It's the exact opposite of aversion and anger. The exact opposite. So anger is a panic attack when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Oh my God, and this is not possible. So what John McEnroe, what he used to say? What he used to say, John McEnroe? The tennis player.
He used to throw his racket.
He did all that, but what was those things he'd say? This can't be happening, or this can't be possible. That's what anger says. Anger's like, oh my God, this is not possible. Well, patience is bring it on, baby, pull up your sleeves and greet the problem. That's patience. It's stupendous. It's an atomic bomb on attachment and, of course, on anger. And it's the one that causes you to continue to move, keep going, steady as a rock, you know. But then the last one, it seems a bit like patience, but it's the most difficult. They're all taught in order of complexity, difficulty. And without this one, you cannot succeed in anything. And it's called joyful effort or enthusiastic perseverance. But it sounds like a bit hilarious to us. Enthusiastic perseverance, joyful effort. We can't conceptualize it. But if we see the opposite, it's very kind of humbling. We'll understand it perfectly. And the opposite is called laziness. And there are 3 kinds. The first is, can't be bothered. Too much effort. So what's the thing we can't be bothered? This is so powerful. What is the thing we can't be bothered doing? The thing that takes too much effort. And what takes effort is what attachment doesn't want. Because we're addicted to comfort. That's why we never progress in anything. Because and the point about this is logical. We know to accomplish anything, you have to stretch yourself. You have to. It's natural because you're not used to doing it. So it's going to take effort. That's the first kind of laziness we've got to get past. And that's the grossest level, the obvious one. And because for us it's so easy to get comfort easily in the car, in the house, wherever we go, we just are addicted to finding the methods to get just to be comfortable. So the minute you've got to do even 5 push-ups, you go to the gym. I'll go to the gym today. You go to the gym, and if the minute it becomes difficult, you stop. Oh, I went to the gym today. You didn't. You pretended. We all know the only time things start to change in your body is when you stretch beyond the comfort zone and the muscles start to hurt. That's what effort means. And here we're talking psychologically, against your delusions, practicing every day, whatever level. You can't progress if there's no effort. It's logic. It's logic. It's logic. This is the grossest level. The next one is really wicked. We dress it up like a virtue. It's like, can't do that, too busy, I'll do it later. That's procrastination, and that's our worst crime against ourselves. So what's that? You see the job, you know you've got to do, and in like a millisecond, I don't want to do that, can't be bothered. But then you lie to yourself, and you say, I'll do it later, and you feel you got off the hook, and you feel better. But and this is our worst crime, and our lives, we are burdened by the things we put off doing. We know that. And when we do them, it's astonishing how short a time they take, isn't it? It's like unbelievable. You can't, and the freshness of it. You're so happy when you finally do it. They say one of the worst ways to die, the lamas say. The worst way to die, the lamas say, is to die with regret of putting things off, of not achieving your goals, you know. Of course, we're talking in the framework of practice, you know. The third one doesn't sound like laziness, but it's really powerful. It's the one that goes, no, not possible. I can't achieve that. No, not possible. Not possible. That completely keeps us paralyzed in our comfort zone. And it sounds like virtue. But the reality is here, logically, the more we understand the nature of mind, the more we understand the delusions are adventitious, the more we understand that there's nothing set in stone, the more we understand we've all got Buddha nature, therefore, the more we know we can do it. It's a question of time. And pacing ourselves. So you've got to start, what do they say? Rome wasn't built in a day. Something starts with the first step. All these wonderful, amazing sayings our mummies taught us, Because what happens with the third one is like setting it in stone. When I think of, say, for example, Lama Zopa, who doesn't sleep, said to not sleep, meditates all the time, whatever. If he's not working for others, he's meditating. I mean, just the thought of it makes me tired. Just the thought of it makes me tired. You understand? You think, and of course I think, I can't do that. Well, at the moment, I can't do that. It's true. If you go to tennis and you see Federer for the first time, it's true you can't do that. But when you know there's a method, and then you start, then you can see, I can do it. So we know there's a method, but you've got to have the wish to want to do it. And then you take the first step. This is what laziness is, these three, and this is what prevents us from achieving anything. Of course, they're talking purely here in terms of spiritual practice, which means working on your mind, all the stuff we're talking about. But if we just think of it in ordinary terms, we can see in the world, people who achieve anything is because they make effort. Okay, most of the stuff is just samsaric, but we can really see it. It's really clear. And we all know when we do make the effort, we feel so good. We know that. We know that. We know that, you know. But this one about putting things off and therefore, and also thinking I can't do it, or holding it because of attachment or reputation, not doing the things you really want to do. I remember reading years ago about some English nurse or Australian nurse or something in England who wrote a book called The Five Greatest Regrets of the Dying. And it was mind-boggling. The greatest regret was that they didn't do what they really, their heart wanted, but they did instead what they thought other people expected of them. That's this kind of laziness. I can't do that. Not possible. But I'll come to Paris next week, Robina. There's a special course on. You really wanted to take it for the last 20 years. Oh, no, I can't do that. No, husband won't let me. No money. No, the kids won't like it. No, I can't take the work. I can't take the time off work. All we do is immediately see all the obstacles. We're not possible. We can't do it. Not possible. Not possible. That's an ordinary example. So this type of one means we have to have a priority. We have to prioritize. And not lie to ourselves. And the point is this too. You might... What we do immediately when we hear something kind of a bit too difficult, we think it's not possible. We cut ourselves off before we even start. So at least we should say, what a good idea, I'd love to come to Paris for that initiation. Then you check to see if it's possible. Maybe you end up not going, but you open the door to the possibility. But often we just say no, right there. Not possible, not possible, no. And we're worried about what we will think. Worried about this, worried about that, worried about the money, worried about the credit card. Can't do this, no, can't do that. Always holding ourselves back. That's enthusiasm. It's possible. Then you check if it is. And if it is, you do it. And if it's not, you sow the seeds. And then you want to do it next time. Just saying no is dead. It's finished. It's really powerful stuff, psychologically, you know. And the one of putting it off is a big lie. It's just a lie. It means you didn't prioritize it. You don't get up in the morning and do your practice and then realize it's no time for breakfast. Oh, didn't eat my breakfast today. So busy doing my meditation. I'll have it later. No way. You don't go to work in your pajamas. Oh no time to change my clothes. I had to do my meditation today. No way. Meditation always comes first. That goes off the list, isn't it? Because we didn't prioritize. But then we say it like a virtue. Oh, I didn't have time. You mean you didn't decide to have time? We've got to realize we're in charge of this process. We're the boss here. We're really enthusiastic about something. We own it, and we will prioritize it, and then we will do it. We know it won't happen if we don't. So just being more honest with ourselves, not being mean to ourselves. The Lamas all say when you know the benefit of something, you will do it. You'll have enthusiasm. And that's where this is hard, because we know the benefit of being fit, and that's hard enough. We know the benefit of money, that's hard enough. We know the benefit. So we'll do the job, we'll do it. But it's hard to see the benefit of working on your mind, hard to see the benefit of practice, really hard to see. It's so long term, you know. So it takes great effort to even think this. Enthusiasm. Without this, we can't ever succeed. Very simple. That's the four perfections, the first four. And with these, you're perfecting the compassion wing. The last two is the wisdom wing. So here, we now talk about concentration meditation, the perfection of note, and the name of this perfection is it's in Sanskrit it's called shamatha. In Tibetan it's called what's it called? Shine. And in English it's called usually calm abiding, which is the name of the result of this technique that these amazing Hindus before the Buddha invented. And the Buddha very happily took with him when he went in his own direction. So this is actually not even a Buddhist teaching, it's a Hindu teaching. And it's usually, and where it fits in the Lam Rim, it fits in high school, where you then work on your mind. And if you're going to finish at high school, if you're going to graduate at high school, which is meaning get your own liberation, or achieve your own nirvana, achieve your own liberation from suffering, you would add to your renunciation, you'd get concentration, and then you would realize emptiness. And then you'd cut the roots of delusion, you'd keep practicing, and then one life or other, you would have completed the job, you've achieved your nirvana, and then when you die, you zap into bliss, you don't come back. So emptiness, so concentration is even a Hindu teaching, but it's got the Buddha's take on it. And then secondly, emptiness is a high school teaching. It's a middle scope. It's not a great scope teaching. But they're taught here in the framework of the Mahayana path in terms of the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva path. And so they're called the six perfections. When they're done in conjunction with the compassion wing, they're much more powerful. So they're taught in this framework here, as on the Mahayana part of the path. So like I said just a few times, concentration is just the the shorthand for this result that comes. In Sanskrit it's samadhi, single point of concentration. Well, the name of the technique, which is in terms of the result. I think samadhi and shamatha aren't quite synonymous, but they're sort of similar. But it's what we need in order to finally go to the sixth perfection, which is then to realize, as we call it, realize emptiness. The sixth one is called the perfection of wisdom. So wisdom in general in Buddhism is used as a word that refers to whatever's wisdom is when you're in sync with reality. So 1 plus 1 is 2. That's wisdom. It's true. Whatever's true. This is a massive point in Buddhist psychology, a massive in Buddhist philosophy, huge one. We've got to get to the understanding here. And that's where it's a contingent thing. Truth in acupuncture is not truth in allopathy. It's very clear. So it's got to be a dependent arising, within a certain system. The laws in like some other type of Indian music are not the same as classical Western music. Each got its own system, So everything's relative. Everything's dependent arising. Relative is not a limitation. Relative means dependent arising, not absolute, because there can be nothing that's absolute. So okay. So we need this concentration so that we can then do the sixth one, which is finally cut the root of all the delusions, which we've been working on very hard up until now, finally cut the root delusion. And then perfect that realization. And then the combination of all of this is Buddhahood. So let's look at wisdom. So what Buddha's saying across the board is that the stuff in these delusions in our mind are causing us to be deeply unhappy, cause us to harm others, but crucially are causing us to not be in sync with reality. And he means that quite literally. The function of all the delusions is to prevent us from seeing what's real. They cause us to see certain things. So attachment, and they all embellish. Their job is to embellish or to superimpose or to exaggerate or to decorate. As Amos says, all these delusions decorate on top of what is there. The cup, the person, the event, the I, you name it. That the delusion's main function is to decorate on top of what is there, layers upon layers upon layers of characteristics that just aren't there. So one way of stating what the entire Buddhist path is the removing of the pollution from the mind, the removing of the dust from the mirror, the removing of the delusions that prevent us from seeing reality. And with bodhicitta, that's wisdom. And then with bodhicitta, you enhance the virtues to an infinite degree of astonishment, And the combination of wisdom and compassion, that's the Buddha, the two wings of the bird. Okay, so already... Okay, so the best way, Tsongkhapa says, the best way to understand this, get insight into this reality, they call it the ultimate reality, the final way that things actually exist. The best way is to see it in terms of the two truths, conventional reality and this so-called final or ultimate reality. So there's different ways of talking about these two truths, but the way we're going to discuss here is that every phenomenon that does exist has these two modes of existing. And it's the understanding of these two and understanding how they're not contradictory that's the most powerful method to realize this reality. So the shorthand for ultimate reality is the word emptiness, which really misleads us, but we've got to understand it, and we'll discuss it. The shorthand for conventional reality is dependent arising, interdependence. There's different terms for that. So right now, Buddha says, we exist because of ego grasping and all the other delusions, we completely buy into the two wrong views. So whenever we hear about emptiness, we hear it as nihilism. We throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then whenever we hear about dependent arising, we overinflate it, we inflate it, we reify it, we concretize it, we see it as eternalistic and permanent, and we see it set in stone. So we're living in the two extreme views, neither of which is real. Now philosophically, Eternalism is the view of a creator, a soul, a self. That's the classic philosophical presentations of that philosophy. The nihilistic view, you could argue that the philosophical materialism as a philosophical view is nihilistic in this way that Buddha's talking. Or even more so, there's one view, there is nothing, that you end up as nothing, which is what the Western view says. Similar, even in some of in the Buddhist tradition, the Hinayana tradition, there's different ways the traditions interpret these Buddhist teachings. So it's very interesting. But the Theravadan teachings, the teachings you'd get in Buddhist, the Hinayana ones, those teachings we discussed already, the first and second scopes, junior school and high school, which you'd learn in Burma or Thailand, you'd be taught there that when you've achieved your nirvana, in whichever life it is, when you die, nothing's left. You're gone. The Mahayanas would say that's a view of nihilism. It's not being sectarian. There's different views of Buddhist teachings, it's very interesting. As His Holiness says, we Mahayanas have a problem with that, he said. The Mahayana view is mind can never end. But the Hinayana view is that all mind is even itself contaminated. So when all delusions are gone, mind has gone. You're like, there's nothing left. That's it, you're finished. Not the Mahayana view. So there's many different views in Buddhism. Okay, so let's look at these ultimate and relative realities. So the Buddha is saying basically every phenomenon that we do cognize with our mind, these delusions superimpose certain characteristics upon those phenomena. So it's fairly easy. I mean, we can sort of see it with attachment, If I'm attached to this thermos, which I am, which means I exaggerate its niceness, So like I'm seeing it now a bit dirty and I want to clean it. I see a dent in it and I want to make it go undented, but I can't, it's too heavy. Get my point, you understand? So when you've got attachment to the most simple, obvious thing, like the objects of your senses, You want to see it all the time, you want to touch it, think about it. That's how it is. We can see this, it's pretty clear. So attachment over-exaggerates its deliciousness. Aversion, when my cup gets so broken and so beaten and so ugly, I have aversion for it now. So that over-exaggerates its ugliness. And this is how we spend our lives, as we've been talking. We're doing this all the time, swinging between crazy monkeys, between these two extremes, So now these two, again, look at me, well done. Third time lucky. It's okay, that missed that time. Okay, thank you so much. I'll just knock it that way. Your phone is boogie, that's right. Okay, so, sorry. You okay there? Can you hang on for one more hour? You all right? Okay, good. Okay. So basically, when you learn Buddhist philosophy, you learn this, you start off with the terms for that which exists. There's about 6 synonyms, I can't remember them all. Phenomenon, object, object of knowledge, existent, established base. 5 or 6, I can't remember. And they're all synonymous. And they're all terms used to refer to that which exists. And why is Buddha concerned with that? Because the mind's job is to cognize that which exists. Right now we're living in la-la land because the delusions in here are causing us to cognize things that don't exist. A cake that's delicious that'll make me happy. A divine thing that'll last forever. Those phenomena don't exist. They are fabrications. There is a basis there. There is a thing we can label an established base, a thermos. What's a thermos? Well, that's that metal thing over there, darling. You'll see it, and it's got a flat base, so that's what it is. Now, but that's its first part of the definition. A definition tells you its conventional characteristics. In this case, it's metal, it's flat-bottomed, and it's kind of got some kind of stuff inside that. Anyway, okay. And then the second, that's the first part. That tells you what it is, conventional characteristics. The second part of the definition is crucial. We really want to understand emptiness. It tells you its job, its function. What does it do? What is it? What is its meaning? What does it do? It keeps my tea warm, darling. That's the definition of a thermos cup, let's say. So once we've all agreed upon that, we can all discuss thermoses. We've all agreed that the term thermos refers to that phenomenon. And we have to have that definition, and we all have to have agreement. Otherwise, we're all talking at cross purposes. So we first establish something as existing, conventionally. So the universe consists of trillions of conventional phenomena. So conventional phenomenon, even that's not enough to really prove it's true, because we will believe what we're told. We shouldn't. Buddhists say we've got to establish it as existing using logic. So Mummy just told me what it is, but that's not enough. I shouldn't just believe her. She has now go to the next step, and she's got to prove. She's got to prove that it's that. So she will pour her tea, and then 1 hour later, we'll find out the tea is still warm. That's the proof that it will fit the definition to keep my tea warm. But that's still not enough. We've got to make sure within our world where we use the term thermos, there's no valid cognition of it that contradicts that. Now we can be content that there is a phenomenon called a thermos. We all shake hands, tick the box, and agree. Now we can proceed to discover how a thermos actually exists. So, all delusions decorate something. And we learn that in high school about attachment and aversion and our crazy emotions. And that's why it's so powerful to help us see how they're liars. So this helps us, this prepares us to get to the deeper level of understanding the root delusion and how it's the root lie. It's the root lie. This is the source of all the others, and they were the source of all our suffering, the source of all universes, the source of all suffering. So, how does ego so the ignorance is the name of this root delusion, ma-ripa in Tibetan. And it's a very particular ignorance, obviously. It's in general ignorance about the way that things exist ultimately. But it's kind of double trouble ignorance. Regular ignorance is easy to fix. If or something. If regular ignorance is like this, what's that, Robina? I don't know. Sweetie, it's a tulip. Oh, thank you very much. Suddenly you've got wisdom. There was no resistance to that, because there was no other view in the mind that contradicted that. There's no other view in the mind about what you thought it was, right? You just don't know what it is. I think if we had only that kind of ignorance, we'd all be Buddha in a couple of years, because we're very intelligent. But no, the ignorance that keeps us back, that is like a vampire that's insane, is not only do we not know it's a tulip, we think it's a peanut or something. That's a vague example. And we're addicted to the belief that it's a peanut. And for so long we've seen tulips as peanuts that we even see a peanut. That's a simple example. So not only do we not know what it really is, we've made up a complete story about what we think it is, and that's what we believe in. And so to rip that lie out of the mind, we will do anything to protect us to keep that lie. That's the irony of all the delusions. We are clinging to them like vampires. You'd think you'd be happy, Oh, really? It's not a peanut after all? Oh, great, thank you. No, we are attached to it being a peanut. We believe it's a peanut. We are invested in it being it's a peanut. And it's a dumb example. So how it goes here is this. So ego grasping, it's known colloquially as ego grasping when it relates to the object called I. So let's analyze the object called I and how it does exist. So there's billions and trillions of phenomena, remember, conventional phenomena. This is a thermos, a microphone. That's a thermos, that's a book, that's a cloth. We know these words. So this one is a phenomenon, is a person. So person or self, I, me, are all synonyms. A dog is a person. A Buddha is a person. We are persons. That's the term conventionally for the kind of phenomenon that we are. Okay, now let's look at how this ego grasping causes us to mistakenly believe not only to not know the way the I exists ultimately. So not only do we not know the reality of the I, we're going to go into that, we have this ignorance has imposed the complete opposite. So the words for this are this. Ego grasping believes 1 billion trillion %, and has for eons, that there is in here a real concrete, definite, self-existent, intrinsic I. Another way of putting it is an I that exists in and of itself, an I that exists intrinsically, than an I that exists independently of any causes and conditions or anything else, an I that is in its nature, existing naturally, an intrinsic I, an essential I, whatever words you like. We have believed 1,000,000,000% and have believed and do believe that there is an I there. But we don't think we think that. No one ever taught us that, and it's so primordial, it's just completely, it's not articulated, you know. And that belief in not only we didn't understand the real nature of the I, which is that there isn't an intrinsic I, we've imposed an intrinsic I on top of it. So it's like this is a double trouble. And the Buddha's saying that that's why there is any suffering, why we get rebirth, why there are hell realms, why there are God realms, why there's human realms, why anybody does anything to harm anybody. It's because of this root delusion, which gives rise to the attachment to get what the I wants, which gives rise to aversion when it doesn't get what it wants, which gives rise to the other delusions, which gives rise to our behaviour of body and speech, which harms others, which gives rise to the hell realms and lower realms, and it never stops. For eons, Buddha says. This is analysis. It's all there in the text, in the literature. So, we have to get to see clearly how there isn't that I. And that's what emptiness refers to. We have to discover that that I, a fantasy I, an I that's independent, and these words sound very vague to us, like don't grab us. We have to realise that there isn't that I, has never been, isn't and could never be. And that's the part that's hard. So, okay, the king of logics to prove emptiness, as Lama Yeshe paraphrases Tsongkhapa, is dependent arising. There are many logical reasons we have to think about in the literature. There are many logical reasons we have to use in debate and meditation to prove to us the truth of this. But the king of logics, as Lama puts it, is dependent arising. This dependent arising is the shorthand for how things exist conventionally. So the Buddha presents here dependent arising in terms of 3 levels, and these are each arguments with prevailing positions at the time, where he diverged from the Hindus. And I'm conflating the first 2 a little bit here, but basically the first one is that we believe totally that there is an I that does exist without depending upon any causes. We don't think we think that, but if we look very casually into our lives, I think we can prove it. So the point here is we know that things are a cause and effect, but the analysis in the materialist world is the causes for me are mummy, daddy, genes, DNA, and all the complications of the external world, and indeed all the treatment I've had and the different conditions of life. That's logical. Buddha doesn't argue with that. He's agreeing, but he says we're missing a crucial piece. We're missing the crucial piece called mind and past actions in that mind, that where the main causes of me and mine are. So we just look casually at how we feel when we're hurt and upset, or feeling defensive or angry or jealous. It's I didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault. Nothing to do with me. An ego does everything in its power to get us off the hook, to not be responsible, to not be accountable. That's proving that we don't think there are any causes that I have done that bring me my experiences. That's the innocent victim idea. But when we think about karma, this is junior school, when we think about cause and effect of karma, that everything in my mind comes programmed from me at the first second of conception, and that my actions are the main cause of all my experiences, that is what counteracts ego grasping. That's what already loosens the grip of ego grasping. That already is counteracting the self-pity me. It already lessens attachment and aversion and brings courage and accountability. It's powerful. And karma is one excellent example of this first level of dependent arising, cause and effect. And cause and effect is the law that runs the universe. Everything's a product of cause and effect. That's the first argument. That's the grossest one. The more subtle one, I want to do a little bit of analysis of this one, which is very fascinating. It goes like this, that this ego grasping causes us to believe, 1,000,000,000%, that within here, this is the parameters, isn't it, of the person called Robina. So in the second one, the first one is that we're dependent upon causes. The second one is we're dependent upon parts. So this one goes that in here, within this combination here of body and mind, because we've got two parts basically, body and mind, speaking simply, that within here, ignorance totally believes that there is in here somewhere a very special part. And one mistaken view is that there's a very special part that's independent of the other parts that runs the show, and that's called I. We believe this 1,000,000,000%. All our languaging expresses it, and we reinforce it every day, how we talk, how we think, and we never question it. It's absolute truth for us. And Buddha says there's not an atom of truth, and we have to prove it to ourselves. Let's do a couple of little logical arguments to prove how there isn't one, and we don't even need one. This philosophical view is the same as the creator view. The view, it was very interesting, some very nice Lutherans came to Kathmandu one year that I was there, back in the 80s or something. And I mean, I gave a talk. They wanted to know about the difference between Buddhism and Christianity. They were lovely people. And when I started to discuss karma, it was amazing. There's one fellow, he was amazing, he was so intelligent, he was so brilliant, what he said was so brilliant. He said, when he heard about karma, that there's no boss, there's no creator running the show and punishing and rewarding, he said, how come there's not anarchy among Buddhists? That's a really good point. So the assumption is we need bossing, we need mummies and daddies and managers and bosses and creators who will keep us under control and who punish if we're naughty and reward if we're good. You get my point? That's our view of morality, and it was a really good point. Buddha says we don't need that, we do it to ourselves. So the same with the self. We think our self is like the creator, the boss that runs the show. We talk that way. This is not the subtlest meaning yet. It's very tasty. So let's look at this. One really excellent argument here they talk about to try and prove. They say if there's anything that does exist, there's either one thing or there's more than one. This sounds very peculiar, but you'll get the point. Okay, I'll use a simple example, and I'll say I have a table, a book, and a cup, a thermos, okay? I have a table, a thermos, and a cup. Now, if you hear those words coming out of my mouth in English, and we all know the meaning of these words, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut with your eyes over here, you're going to look here, and you're going to prove, hopefully, that I'm speaking the truth, isn't it? It would be helpful, wouldn't it? You with me? Very easy, isn't it? So you look here and you go, yep, she's right. Now, if I said, I've got an elephant here, poor Robina's in trouble, you know? Do you get my point? Because we know the definition of a thermos, cup, and a table. Now, I made a statement there, so let's now do the analysis. I'll say the statement again. I have a mug, a thermos, I have a thermos, a mug, and a table, and a cup, and a book. So that's four phenomena, right? I is a phenomenon. Remember, we're a phenomenon. Table, cup, and book. You agree? Four phenomena. So it's clear. If I state that, you have to isolate four phenomena from each other, don't you? And that means that they're in this sense. This is where the word independence is so important. In this example, you have to point out four phenomena that don't depend upon each other for their function. Can you hear that? Okay, my cup breaks. My book is fine, isn't it? My book doesn't depend upon the existence of a cup to function as a book, does it? My table does not depend upon the existence of my thermos to be a table. I don't depend upon. Do you get my point? Attachment thinks so, that's why we all get broken-hearted. Do you get my point here? So we've pointed out four phenomena, and this is what the meaning of separate. There's other types of phenomena, and this is what we're going to get to, that are different, but not separate. But here they're different and separate, which means they can be separated. Which means when the cup breaks, the book is not affected, is it? You get my point? It's very simple, logical. Now I'll make another statement. I have a nose, a hand, and a foot. Well, it's the same discussion here. There are four phenomena there. I stated. Remember, a phenomenon isn't like a noun or a pronoun. Because you see, this is the interesting point here. What the mind does, it cognizes nouns. They always talk about how the mind, which is the subject, always has an object. There's always an object of cognition. And whatever the mind cognizes is an object of cognition, is an existent, is a phenomenon, is an object of knowledge. And so you're sort of like making things into nouns. I find it like that to be helpful. So the mind cognizes so there are 4 phenomena I just mentioned. There's one called eye, or Robina. There's one called nose, one called hand, and one called foot. That's 4 names, 4 words, 4 phenomena. You agree with this, people? You agree with this, don't you? It's very easy, isn't it? Now let's see if we can do the same logical argument. Well, here's my foot. I cut my foot off. My hand is not affected, is it? And my foot to function, to walk, doesn't need a hand, does it? You agree with that? My nose to function, to blow snot, needs neither a foot nor a hand. Do you accept that? So in that sense, these are 3 separate phenomena, and they're different phenomena. But what about the 4th, or the first, eye? Now we assume that there is something in here, like the nose, the hand, and the foot, that we can isolate and point to that's different from the nose, the hand, and the foot. We talk like that, we feel like that, and we utterly believe that. But put it this way, it's very obvious it can't be true. It's very clear. If there were another piece, just another piece in here called I, and we mean that, a separate I, because we say, I have a hand. Isn't it? So if there's an I, there's not the hand. When the hand gets hurt, when the hand gets cut off, and you know, the eye, which is watching, like the foot, wouldn't mind. The foot is not affected by the hand, so if the eye was separate, it would not be affected either. But we say, I'm in pain. You insult my nose. I go, don't you insult me. You'll say, no, I didn't. I insulted your nose. So this is proving the point that there is an I that is dependent upon the parts, but you can't separate it from the parts. It's separate, it's different. They're different. They're the same entity, but they're different phenomena. You can say that, but they're dependent. And that's the part we've got to understand. That there can be phenomena that are dependent, but you can't split them off. You can't separate them and isolate them. And we want to have everything isolated. If there's an eye, if there's a hand, there's a hand. A foot, there's a foot. If there's an eye, there's an eye. But you won't find it, Buddha says. So there is an I, but that is not independent. That's all. There's a dependent arising I. And that makes it kind of like it's sort of sneaky. So we have to first understand the words here, and then we have to understand it experientially in meditation. And from the first moment of the realization of the emptiness of the I, the absence of the I, the existence of the non-existence of that I, that's when we become, that's when we achieve, that's when we make this shift. We start climbing out of samsara into nirvana, and we can't fall back after that. Buddha says we've had powers in countless lives. We've been able to manifest in many bodies. We've been unbelievably clairvoyant. We've been amazing beings. We've been wish-fulfilling jewels, kings, God knows what. We've never realized emptiness. We get so far up the mountain, then we fall down again. So we've got to realize emptiness. Cut the root. So are there any suggestions of what the I might be? Because we say the word every day, we believe it, it's the noun, it's the word that runs the show. You know, we think it is the boss, we think it's the boss that, you know, we say I am holding, you know, okay, there's another analysis in a second, Felicity. Another quick analysis. This is quickly to prove it from another direction. And I like this. I'm holding a cup in my right hand of thermos. This is true. But what if I forgot? You'd have to train me, wouldn't you? And there'd be a lot of work to do because it's automatic now. But you know, if you start to put down on a piece of paper, like IKEA, the list of all the pieces you've got to put together to make a table, you'd have an awful lot of pieces, wouldn't you? To make up the pieces that are playing their role in holding a cup in my right hand. You'd have hundreds of pieces of the body, pinky, one thumb, this, wrist, ligament, you understand? Each would be very precisely got its own role, and all working beautifully together as the result of holding a cup in my right hand. Do you agree with that? There'd be hundreds of parts, wouldn't there? So each of those parts does their job, don't they? And they don't fight with each other. They've all got a job, isn't it? Now the main player here is obviously the mind, and this is a dead body, forget about it. So the mind, there are hundreds of parts of the mind as well. We're not used to thinking that way. But there's ear consciousness so I can hear your instructions. There's eye consciousness so I can watch. There's tactile so I can feel what's going on. Isn't there? All the senses are playing a role like crazy every second. Then there's intention, I will do this, I will do that. Attention, concentration, vigilance, many parts of our mind all playing together to work hand in hand with all the parts of the body. And if you had to put them all down on a long list, you'd have hundreds. Do we agree with that? Do we agree with that? Okay, now this is the question. And each part has their role. So what role is left over for the poor little precious eye that's been left out? What role would it have? Give some me ideas, please. What's the job of I? We think. What's the job of the self? We think. What's the job, you think, of the eye that has been missing? What's missing from this piece? The thumb does this, the pinky does that, this does this, the ligaments do that, the elbow does this, the elbow this does that, intention does that. You know, each piece does their job completely. So what piece is missing? Called I, for a poor little eye. What job is missing?
Observer.
Director.
Huh?
Observer.
Observer,
Director.
observation is a function of mind.
Director.
Director, that's the term we have, but what's his job? What does it do? Okay,
That's the intention.
oh, intention is mind. We've covered mind. Intention's already covered. And if you do want a boss, it's intention.
CEO.
Yes, intention's a CEO. We add a CEO on top that we call the self. So that's what Buddha's saying. Within the this is a perfect point. Within this body, you will find a piece. Relatively speaking, there is a piece called intention, which is in the mind, which says, I will do this. There is a piece that says attention, that pays attention. There's a piece that's called concentration. There's a piece that's called vigilance. All the bits of the mind all work together. There's a piece called thumb and little finger and ligament and tendon. All the bits and pieces of the body and all the bits and pieces of the mind. And they all work together and they fulfill the function of holding the cup. But we add this piece called the CEO, the boss, the creator, called I, and we believed in it for so long, but there isn't one, and we don't need one, but we have imposed it, and we think it, and we say the word I all the time. It's an inflation, it's an exaggeration, it's an invention. That independent I does not exist. Now don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Buddha's not saying there's no I. There is, but you can't pin it down. And finally, when you really understand this, the subtlest meaning of dependent arising is that I is a word, a name we give to the bits and pieces out of convenience.
So the brain is coordinating all of this.
No, the mind is coordinating. The brain is just a piece of the body that works with the grosser level of mind. But the mind is the boss, not the brain, not for Buddha. The brain, I would put it this way, not trying to be rude to psychiatrists and neuroscientists and all these geniuses, but I would put it this way, using the Buddha's analysis. The brain is the physical indicator of what's going on in consciousness. Buddha's referring to the non-physical level of the brain is like an indicator of everything that, whatever the mind does anything, you're going to see the evidence of it in the brain. Put it that way. That's my way of putting it. Does that make sense for a psychiatrist? Yeah, okay.
From the Buddhist point of view at least.
Yes, well exactly, that's right. Go on, yes.
So is the I then the pronoun that we use a shortcut so that we don't have to talk about the thumb and the...
Yeah, exactly right. It's a good way of putting it. Exactly right. It's a convenient way of saying, you know, that I is just the name we give, the name we give to the parts. But it's not the parts. It's the name we impose upon the parts. That's exactly right.
Literal pronoun.
Exactly. Quite literal. That's exactly right. Yeah. What was
It's a
yours?
label for the ego.
No, there's no ego. Ego is a very too loose a word. Ego is a Greek word for I, and we're losing it very loosely here. I and ego are synonymous right now, but we don't think of it like that. But we're talking about what we think of as the boss, because we all the time thinking, I did this, and I did that, and I this, and you did this to me, and how dare you do this, and I'm this, and I'm that. We're thinking this all the time. It's our favorite pronoun. And the thing is, it's not wrong to say I, but we overinflate its status, its ontological status. We overinflate it. That's the point. We give it power and function and status that it doesn't have. And that's what all the delusions do. They over-exaggerate the status of things. That's the way to try and think about it. Christy, what was your point?
So, at the different levels that we are right now, before we realize emptiness, what does it look like when we're feeling all of our feelings, but we're also working on finding the I and noticing that it's like, what does that part look like? Because you said we feel with the I.
What, darling? I don't understand you.
You said that we feel with the I, like we put all of these emotions. So in this part, before we realize emptiness, what does this look like? Like how the next time that someone wrongs me, how do I now, not now, but like how do
So
I?
what are you asking this, that the more we understand the meaning of emptiness, how do we live our life? How would it look?
Yeah, how does it look when we're?
Okay, very easy, yeah. Even before get to, okay, keep remembering that ego grasping, which is the job of grasping at the inherent me, is the same function of an attachment, which is his main voice, they all overinflate things. They've all got this intimate relationship with each other. It's just that ego grasping is the root one that informs the others. So even in high school, when we learn about attachment and aversion, how they inflate and exaggerate and make us unstable, already we're stabilizing our mind. Already we're weakening ego grasping, even not explicitly. Because attachment and aversion are the voices of ego grasping. And if you're weakening attachment and aversion, you're weakening ego grasping. So we're preparing ourselves to get here. So by now we're already quite stable. So even as you lessen your delusions, you're lessening the grip of the poor little self-pity me. There's less self-pity. There's less up and down. You take things less, you're less neurotic, you're less fearful, you're less jealous, you're less everything. You're more stable, therefore you're more content, therefore you're braver, you're more courageous. So you'll hear criticism without going crazy. That's how it is. So the more you understand emptiness, that increases and increases and increases. It's gradual, incremental. Do you understand?
No.
That's the evidence of it. That's the proof that we're on the right track. Do you understand? Yeah. What else? Yes.
How could the I be an existent phenomena, even exist conventionally, if it serves no function, if it doesn't have a function?
But that I doesn't exist, which is the point. It doesn't exist. But okay. Every phenomenon in the universe does exist conventionally as a dependent arising. But what ignorance does is overinflate its status and makes it inherent. So we're not throwing out the object, we're throwing out the mistake that sees it as inherent. So there always is an I, there is a microphone, there is a book, there is cup, there is bad, there is good. But when we have removed all the delusions, it's kind of like we just see it from it's not overinflated, it's not set in stone, it's not permanent, it's not inherent. It's just a name we give. So as Lamsa puts it, when we realize emptiness, ultimate reality, and I'm going to go into that word in a minute, when we realize this truth, when we realize there has never been an intrinsic me, intrinsic microphone, or intrinsic anything else, he says, it's as if there is no I, no microphone, no this, no that. When we realize the emptiness of it, the absence of that fantasy. But he says, dependent arising wise, conventionally, there is an I, there is a microphone that functions. There is a microphone that functions to amplify my voice. But what does exist is so subtle. It's as if it is an illusion. So it's the fine balance between these two truths that keeps us grounded. So right now we have, there's no I, there is an I. La-di-da, perfect, divine, delicious, up in the sky, delicious I. Kill myself, there's no I. They're the extreme, neurotic, mistaken views. But as we start to understand dependent arising and emptiness, they stop separating. They start to bring us closer to each other and lead us to the middle way that says, finally, that when we understand dependent arising, conventional reality, it's just the flip side of emptiness. So when we understand dependent arising, it leads us to understand emptiness. And when we understand emptiness, it leads us to understand dependent arising. And finally, when we've got these two together, that's Buddha. No longer duality. So right now, they're separate for us. There's either an I or there's not an I. There is an I. Make up your mind, mate. It's way more nuanced than that. So we've got to get this fine understanding of the use of these words. It's not meant to be tricky yogi talk. Like anything, you have to learn to understand the thing. So there is conventionally an I that does exist in dependence upon causes, parts, and finally the mind labeling. But you can't pin it down. It's not intrinsic. It's not from its own side. It's a merely labeled, dependent arising. So it's so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. But it still functions to hold my tea, to amplify my you know. Negative actions still function to harm sentient beings. But the sentient beings are empty, the action's empty, the I is empty, everything's empty. That's why when Lama Zopa does a dedication prayer, he talks about then, I that is empty from its own side, dedicate which is empty from its own side, all the merits which are empty from their own side, for the sake of all sentient beings which are empty from their own side, so I can become a Buddha which is empty from its own side, to remind us that everything is empty and everything is dependent on arising. Of course, it's just nonsense for us in the beginning. We get puzzled and get confused.
Of all these things that you have mentioned, conventionally they have a function.
That's right.
What is the function of the I conventionally?
The self, I forget the definition, is something like it creates causes, it does actions, creates karma. So that's a funny definition. But the function, so whatever, I think it's a function, it does actions.
Mm-hmm.
It does actions. I mean, a cup holds tea, a microphone amplifies. A person, an I, creates actions, something like that. And so the crucial one about function is really vital to understand the function. Because if we hear that everything is empty and there's no inherent nature, we'll go, well, that means anything can be anything. Oh, I can call this a peanut. No, you can't. It's got to function as a peanut in the way you define a peanut. Now, the fact is, we call this a thermos right now, right? We call it a thermos. Now, the point is, you know, if you're desperate, it could function as a toilet. It could function as a toilet. It's not conventionally, you don't buy this as a toilet, but we know very well it could function as a toilet. That's a valid statement. Everyone might agree it's a toilet, and they'll be disgusted if you use it as a toilet, but we know it will function as a toilet. But you can't say it functions as a rose. You've got to have a definition of a rose. It can never be a rose unless you get every dictionary on the planet and change the definition of rose to be what a thermos is. So function's really important, because the way Tsongkhapa says it, in his hymns of experience, the yogis, in their meditation, are directly experiencing the reality of the absence of inherent existence, emptiness, which we're going to describe that word. The absence of inherent existence. And in their daily life, where things still appear as if they exist from their own side, but they don't believe it. But nevertheless, they still function exactly as stated. So the function never disappears, which means it's grounded in truth. It's not as if everything turns into nothingness. This is the word saying. It's time to go home. Oh, no, not quite. We're 10 to 4. So let's now look at the word emptiness. We get so confused about this. Okay. I mean, we were talking about emptiness, but I haven't used the word. I'm going to use it now. So, okay, we hear we've got to realize emptiness. And we lose the plot, you know. But it's not too complicated. We use this word. I will go, oh no, my cup is empty. Won't I? And what do I mean? Very simply, what do I mean?
Nothing in it.
No. What was I expecting in my cup? Thank you. Empty cup does not mean there's nothing in it. It means there's no tea in it. It's nothing that. This is a really good point. Thank you. It's whatever I expected to be there isn't there. This is a really powerful point. Do you understand my point? The only if you go to the, what do you call it in America? We call them crockery in England and Australia. The cups and saucers. If you go to the shop, to the cups and saucers shop, you don't look in the cup and go, oh mum, all the cups are empty, because you don't expect tea to be in cups in the shop, do you? So the only person who says my cup is empty is a person who thinks there should have been tea or coffee or whatever it is, not just there's nothing in it. That's a really good point. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you look in your bank, oh God, my bank account's empty, you know it means empty of dollars. Do you get my point? You're looking for Mary. Oh no, the room's empty. We mean there's no people there. So it's really quite specific, and this is exactly what it's like here. Can you hear my point? So now we're saying my cup is empty. So my mind is cognizing that reality. Do you agree? So turn it into a noun. What does my mind cognize? Turn it into a noun phrase. What is my mind cognizing? The emptiness of tea, the lack of tea, the absence of tea. You can hear that? It sounds a bit fancy way to say it, but that's literally the truth. So there's a phenomenon called the absence of tea. So the mind cognizes, whatever exists. If there's tea in my cup, my mind will cognize tea in my cup, won't it? It will cognize the presence of tea in my cup. So tea is a phenomenon. Do we agree? Tea can be cognized by the mind? Do you agree? Okay, I've just discovered there's no tea in my cup. So we turn that around and turn it into a phenomenon. It's called the absence of tea. So the absence of tea is a phenomenon the mind can cognize. Do you agree with that? So all phenomena have to exist somewhere. So where does tea exist? If there were tea in my cup, where does tea exist?
In the cup.
So if there's no tea in my cup, where does the absence of tea exist? In my cup! You agree? If I'm looking for, if I put my hand in the pocket to find $5 to lend you, and I put my hand in and go, oh, what do you think I just discovered? The absence of $5. But not, so that's what we think about. We think about emptiness. Oh, there's no I, there's no anything, everything's empty, might as well kill myself. That's nihilism. So seeing there's nothing in your cup, no, that's nihilism. There's the emptiness of what you thought was there. It's really specific. Can you hear that? If you look in your bank account and you're expecting $7,000, you're going to come on pilgrimage with me, let's say in October. You need $5,000 for the pilgrimage and $2,000 for your flight, let's just say. And you plan to come, and you know there's $7,000 in your bank account, and you can't wait, you're going to register to come on the pilgrimage with me. And you look at that bank account, and let's say, it doesn't matter, let's say there's $47, let's say there's $0, it doesn't really matter here, but all you will see, you won't go, oh, there's $47 in my bank, you know, you'll go, oh my God, where's my precious $7,000, won't you? You will cognize the absence of $7,000. Very specific, like in the tea, it's the absence of tea, because you expected it. So you expect $7,000, and that's what you will see isn't there. So it's a very precise absence. It's not just there's nothing. Can you hear the difference? So if there were nothing, if zero was what was written because someone had stolen your money, and this is a good point, and you asked me to look in the bank, I didn't know there'd be 7,000. I just tell you the truth, there's nothing. Well, $0 is like nihilism. There's nothing there. I wouldn't expect anything. I wouldn't see the absence of $7,000 unless you told me. So this is the point about here. So, okay. So one phenomenon is zero, and I cognize that in the bank, right? Do you understand? Now forget zero. Just think of $47. What I cognize is $47. So the object of my cognition is called $47. What's the object of your cognition? Absence of 7,000. So I even though it's got to be a zero. Okay, for this sake, it's got to be a zero. I see no dollars. I see zero. That's really like nihilism. There's just no dollars. But I see that. But you don't see that. You see another phenomenon called absence of $7,000. So that's why when we think emptiness means you pull out all, as Dalai Lama says, you pull out all the pieces, pull out the breasts and the pee-pee and the caca and the knees and the joints, and there's nothing, you're looking for the eye and there's nothing left. Nothing there. That's $0. That's nihilism. It's not like that. It's not like that. What you're looking for is not just, a vague notion of an I. You're looking for a very specific thing called a separate I. An inherent I. An intrinsic I. So when you have your first realization in subtle meditation, beyond conceptual, of the absence of the inherent I equals emptiness, you're going to see for the first time the shock. You'll discover the shocking truth. You'll cognize the phenomenon called absence of inherent I. You won't find nothing. You'll find the absence of the inherent I. You won't find zero. You'll find the absence of $7,000. Are you with me? Now, $7,000 could exist, but an inherent I could never exist. But that's the thing. So it's not that you find there's nothing there. Oh, that's nihilism. There's no I might as well kill myself. That was just the obvious but gross understanding. You find there has never been, there isn't, and there never could be that kind of I, because you made it up. So it's not nothing. It's a crucial point to make. Then, they say, once you've established that, you then realize subtle dependent arising. You then realize what does exist, merely labeled. But it's so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. That's how they say it. All right, people? So like anything, you've got to understand the words first. You know, we're discussing words here, that's all. But words have meaning, and it's up to us to learn the meaning. Then we can begin to string them together in sentences, and then we can begin to get some taste for it, you know. We often say, oh, no, I can't understand it because it's too difficult. But we don't even know how to speak about it, so of course it's too difficult. I mean, I could tell you easily how to understand computer science, because I never studied it. But when I study it, I'll be able to talk about it. But we make it extra hard by thinking you're supposed to somehow to get a realization of it, you know. It's ridiculous. You've got to learn the words first. This is the natural progression to how to understand it first conceptually. Get the thoughts. And then you start to put meat on the bones after that. Do you understand, people? So Lama said, and Buddha says, when we have realized that emptiness, that absence of that I that we thought was there, have been since the beginning of time thinking was there, and is a source of all suffering, that isn't there, can't be, and never could be. We've cut the root of samsara. You've cut the root, and you can't fall back after that. So we're going to look for a second at the logic of this, because it sounds so abstract to us to think you can remove things from your mind. It's so very strange for us. When we understand all these concepts are constructs, they're opinions, viewpoints, conceptual stories, elaborations. And we can do, and all conceptual stories, all concepts, all are constructs. But the Buddha's saying some are valid constructs that do have a referent object. And there are some that are liars that have no referent object. So, conventionally speaking, if I say to you, that is an orange mug. Now we know within the language of English language, we know that, and with the eyes we have and the light, the way the world is, we call that black. Unless I say I forgot the English word and I called it orange instead. And you tell me, no, Robina, it's silly, it's black. I go, oh, of course it's black, you're right. So now, this is the point. Before I just said, there is an orange mug. Now that's a thought, isn't it? It's a concept. Do you agree it's a concept? Words are just expressions of thoughts, and thoughts are all, we live at the conceptual level, where we construct, construct thoughts, we construct ideas, we construct viewpoints. Then you told me the truth, conventional truth within English language, that no, Robina, it's a black mug. And I quickly agreed with you, and I bought into that, and I accepted your truth. Do you understand? I accepted the truth. So I had one thought that said orange mug, then I have another thought that said black mug. The orange thought had no basis in reality, did it? And the black mug, we can say, does. So once I agreed upon it is a black mug, what happened to the previous thought? What happened to it? Quite literally, what happened to it?
Vanished.
Vanished, didn't it? And what made it vanish? What made it vanish? Huh? Truth. What made it vanish is me believing, accepting the truth that black is reality. So by seeing, that's how you get enlightened. So when you finally first start to argue with the lies, things are inherent, things are intrinsic, things are empty, things are this, things aren't that, blah, blah. You argue with them first, and then you start to see the reality. But when you finally see reality, that's what conquers the lie. The lie just doesn't get squashed somewhere or pops up again. It literally has gone, and that's when you cut the root of the root lie, and it can never come back again. That's how you get enlightened. Are you with me, people? Any questions about all that? Any questions here?
I was wondering if you could talk about the relationship between the mental continuum that you were talking about yesterday and this idea of the self, or what really exists.
Of course, yes. So self or I are just a term we use to refer to the aggregates. Buddha calls about the 5 aggregates, the 5 bits and pieces that make us up. But we can think simply it's body and mind. So there's, conventionally speaking, there's body and mind, and the combination of those is the basis of what we say is I. So I is the label we give. So in this case, what's the name of this I, this life?
Michael.
Michael. So Michael's the name we give to this set. But then when you die, it's the deconstruction of these particular aggregates. The body, this gross body that we know as Michael's, will completely disappear. But what will be left is a subtle wind energy, which is always there anyway, and then the subtle mind, the very subtle consciousness that we labelled Michael all our life. All the grosser package will cease. And what's left is very subtle consciousness and very subtle wind energy, which are inextricably linked. So they are now the basis of the label I still. But there's no Michael yet, so it's just sort of in between. So that'll keep going and keep going, and then you go to womb, and you get known as Mary. So now the continuity of that body and mind, and there's always a continuity of both. And the continuity of body is the subtle wind energy, and they're always together. And the continuity of mind is the subtle mind, and that joins Mary, a new womb, and you have a Mary shape. And now the name of the person is called Mary. But it's the same. The continuity of that body and mind are beginningless and endless. So you want to point out it's the consciousness. Continuity of consciousness. There's always coming along with the continuity of the subtle physical as well. Do you understand?
I think so.
And I is always, so conventionally there's a noun, there's a name of a phenomenon, and then it's the basis that you put it upon. So there's the parts, and then there's the label microphone. There's the parts, and there's the label chord. There's the parts, and there's the label whatever. There's always the label and the base. And they're never the same. The label can't be the base. I can never be the parts, and the parts can never be I. So I is the name we give to the parts. Michael at this moment, and when Michael's finished, the continuity will go, and then it'll become the continuity. What Michael did will then produce what Mary experiences. And so Mary is now the label we give, but the continuity of mind and body are the basis of the label I in general. So I goes from life to life. But it's not an intrinsic kind of set in stone I as we think it is. It's merely labelled I. Got to get used to the concept of merely labelled I. You understand? What else, people? Yes, Felicity.
No purification.
Oh yeah, we're supposed to talk about that, aren't we? Okay. You think we can cope with more? Okay. Any more questions about emptiness? Nothing more about emptiness? Well, actually, the more we understand emptiness, that is when we really purify. When we realize emptiness, you put an atomic bomb on all the delusions. Until you realize emptiness, there's always negativity and continuity. When we realize emptiness, that's the real purification. That's the final purification, when we realize emptiness. Because as long as we're clinging to an intrinsic I, along that basis we have attachment and aversion and do actions and create negative karma. Once we cut the belief in the intrinsic I, you can't create negative karma, positive karma. You can't cut the root. You've got to carry out experiencing the results of karma for quite a while until you've perfected your mind, removed all the obstacles, removed all the imprints. You can't create more. So the four opponent powers is what they call, the 4 R's, a great way to say it. Lama Zopa says we're insane not to do it every day. And when we understand the logic of karma, we'll understand that. And that's why the garden is a great analogy, especially if you're living in something as dynamic as in Virginia, when the weather's so potent. If you don't deal with your garden every day, they'd be eating up your house, wouldn't it? Especially the tropics, if you live in the tropics, the flowers will eat up your houses. You've got to do gardening every day. You'll be in trouble if you don't, because we know the gardens are dynamic. We don't think our mind is dynamic. We think we're set in stone. We're so gross and ignorant, Everything we think and do and say is processing. We're creating countless lifetimes every second. When we realise that, we'll want to purify every day. It's an amazing way to finish the day, So it's the 4 R's, it's really simple. And you can do it in the most fundamental, easy way and think of it as practical psychology. Please, I beg you not to think of it as religion. There's a way you do it with the Vajrasattva and the purification, your bells and your everything. There is a way. You do retreats and prostrations. There is all that. But here the most essential fundamental point about it, it's the mind. And as he said, we create negativity with the mind. We purify by creating positivity with the mind. So the 4 R's. The first one is regret, and it's powerful. It's not guilt. It's acknowledging, I did that dumb thing. I killed, lied, stole, badmouthed a boyfriend, whatever. I did that thing with my body and speech, based upon delusion, which sowing a seed in my mind, that unless I pull it out, will ripen as my suffering like that. And you know what, baby? I don't want suffering. You just ate that sugar again, you don't want diabetes. It's a very urgent sense of I must get rid of it, must fix it. With that, we get that, So it takes a while to think of karma like this. You regret, you own it, it's ownership. And because you don't want suffering. You're sick of suffering. So it's compassion for yourself. I really mean that. It's so important. It takes a while to get this one. So you regret some specific things in a day, you know. Particular things you did today. So I'm good at the end of the day to clean up your act, you know, just kind of calm yourself down. But then you think of things in this life. I always think of my abortion. It's a good example, you know. Of course, increases compassion, all these things, when you think of those things. And then you think, if you have a view of past lives, you then go, at the end, you then go, and you know what, Robina, because you're to yourself. You know what, Robina, I regret anything I've ever done since beginningless time to harm sentient beings with my body and speech. Because you know why? Because I don't want future suffering. The regret is absolutely based on that. You have to say those words. Otherwise it's just guilt and beating ourselves up, and it's pathetic. Because I don't want future suffering. I regret because I don't want future suffering. You have to speak those words out, I tell you. I think it's not in your course notes, but there's some about karma in your course notes. So naturally you then think, well, whom the hell can I, where's the doctor, please? It's like you've eaten poison, the lamas say. Then whom can I turn to for the medicine? And this is where we take refuge. The second step is reliance. And there's two parts. The first part is we rely upon the doctor. And this is where it's fundamentally different from the Christian view. When I was a Catholic, I then turned to God. And then I have to beg God to forgive me. Why? Because I went against God's will. That's reasonable. So then the logical thing is he has to forgive me. That's what purifies. Not here. Nothing to do with forgiveness. Buddha is a nice person. He would forgive you. But that's like asking your doctor to forgive you for smoking cigarettes so that you then don't get cancer. We would laugh at that. That's Buddha's view. You do the work. You rely upon the doctor. You need their medicine. So when refuge is that, you really are so happy you found a person, the Buddha, who's got some methods that you can use to sort yourself out. That's refuge. The second part of reliance is back to this idea about compassion, where you now rely upon sentient beings, in the sense that you want to cultivate compassion. So now you think of those whom you harmed. This life, past life, the abortion, whatever. You have compassion now for the sentient beings. The first one is like compassion to yourself. Nothing to do with compassion in the first one. It's you. About you is you're sick of suffering. Third one is now you think, well, whom can I turn to? No, sorry, the compassion one. And if you're brave enough, you can have compassion for those who harmed you. If you're brave enough. It's up to you, where you're at. You know. Because why? Because they'll suffer in the future. Third one, the remedy. So here, you can do anything there. The remedy, actually, they often refer to this as the antidote. You can do anything to purify. You can, during the day, if you've purified, if you regretted killing, you try and save lives. You regret lying, you try and tell the truth. Anything you do that's the opposite is an antidote. This third step's like the antidote. But all the lamas, as we know, really praise any practice we do that bring in the Buddhas into the mix because of the potency of enlightened beings, their power, what they represent, and our connection with them. Any practice we do that relates to the Buddhas is a billion times more powerful. The lamas say that. We've got to think about the logic of that. So the third step, we would classically do this practice in the framework of visualizing the Buddha core Bodhisattva from Tantra. And then we do this sort of visualization. And a visualization is just your mind doing something, your mind imagining purifying, your mind regretting, your mind having compassion. Your mind does it. So this third step's very powerful. You say the mantra and you visualize, purifying, blah, blah, blah. Fourth step, Pabonka Rinpoche says, most important. Resolve. You make decisions to not do again. This is really clear. I mean, say I've got, my boyfriend. Let's say Ben's my boyfriend now. And I'm always bad-mouthing it. So I get so guilt. This is where guilt can be really wicked. Guilt, we can misuse guilt, I tell you, in our daily lives. And then getting forgiveness. So I'm really feeling bad. I know and I'm freaking out. I've hurt him. I am compassionate, but mainly I'm freaking out because I'm nervous about whether he'll reject me or not. That's attachment to reputation is a very big part, and we'll get all guilty, So I can't wait to call him up on the phone. I'm so sorry, darling. I didn't mean it. Please forgive me. And what I'm doing is, if I'm misusing, what I'm doing is I'm getting him to get me off the hook by forgiving me. And when he says, all right, darling, I still love you, I go, oh, phew, thank God. Off the hook again. But until anything changes, you won't change. Until you do the fourth step, you make some decision to change. And if he's really my friend, he would say, Robina, I'm sorry, darling, you always ask me to forgive you, and I'm happy to, but if you don't make a decision to change, there's no point in me doing it. So he's forcing me then to realise I've got to make changes, not just get him to make me feel better. We misuse each other to make us feel better, and it's very, very wicked. Because he's afraid I'll reject him, so he forgives me quickly, but if I don't bother ever deciding to change, nothing will change. So I've got to do the fourth step, I will not do it again. Pabonka says it's the most important. So don't lie to yourself, as Mama Zopa says. You don't say, I'll never badmouth Ben again, if it's your old habit, but you might give yourself a timeline. I won't badmouth them for an hour, for 5 minutes, for a day. You be serious, you're serious. This is real serious decisions you're making. So this practice, I call it like being your own friend. Not just some religious thing you do mindlessly. It's very powerful practice, psychologically. It's intelligent. Don't be a Buddha to do it, a Buddhist. It's practical. And then as Amiyesi says, you've got to live with a happy mind. Okay, Felicity? Okay. But it's the power of our mind. Oh. As Amiyesi says, purification is the power of regret, the power of reliance, the power of the remedy, the power of the resolve. It's your mind that does it. If you're chopping down a tree, you kind of give it a whack or two with an axe and you walk away. It'll take 100 years to chop it down. But if you put effort into it, you chop it down quickly. The same with delusions. The more powerfully you do it, the more powerfully you regret, the more powerfully you have compassion, the more powerfully you want to change. What do you think the result is? You'll change. You are the one who makes you. You create yourself. It's not religion. It's psychology. But because it's dressed in this way since the time of Buddha, in the framework of religion, which it is religion, but we are so now split. Is it not true? Look at our culture, our own Christian Jewish culture. Look at it. In the beginning, it was the Catholics that ran the show, didn't it? In Rome, it's certainly, I mean, back before the Jews, after the Jews. The Catholics ran both science and religion because they were the same thing. But then eventually we became materialistic and now completely separate in our culture. Now science is God and religion is this weird, funny thing down over here that's got no power whatsoever. We've done that. But the Buddhist one still, it's going to be changing soon. In Tibet, it was still completely together. The great yogis and logicians and debaters were also the religious ones. Whereas we have that separate in our culture now, isn't it? We've got to materialism and then belief in a God. But in Tibet, it was literally the great logicians, the great yogis, the great scholars. They were the ones that the spirit is coming together. It was not separate. Not separate. That's the real way of seeing Buddhism, but it's very hard for us to do that. It's very hard. In other words, it's not merely belief. That's the point. It's not merely belief. Belief in something plays a role. If I'm studying acupuncture, I've done my research, I've checked up on the teachers, I've got some confidence that they're valid, but I don't have any proof. So of course I have to trust that teacher. Of course I have to have belief in them, but not blind belief. Using your intelligence. Then it's based on wisdom, and as you keep proving it, your belief and your faith increase and become genuine knowledge eventually. So don't even misunderstand the one of belief, but we think of it as blind belief because you can't prove. That's the view of religion we have. Buddha does not talk like that. If you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. That's logic for Buddha, all the way to Buddhahood. It just takes time to prove things, but first inferentially, intellectually, theoretically. Any questions before we go home? Okay. So we can finish. Company. Yes. Thank you, people. Well, I just enjoy talking about this stuff. It's a job Lama Zopa gave me, so I'm happy to do it. So I'm always totally grateful you come, because I look very silly talking to myself, wouldn't I? I always think that, and I really mean it sincerely, because you give me an excuse to do it. And it's my practice, so thank you very much for the opportunity. And as all the yogis in the text always say, if there's any benefit to anybody else, and that's a bonus. So you've helped me, and it's really been useful for me, so thank you. So if there's any use to you, that's extra good. All right? Thank you, people. Thank you for inviting me. You invited me. Thank you very much. Very kind. So we think, we've been these 2 days, not a single second of it has gone to waste. It's all gone to our minds, programmed in there, all these seeds we planted. We should be so blissed out, all this weekend of gardening. So we have this aspiration to nourish these seeds with our virtue, in whatever method, whether you're a Mickey Mouseist or a Buddhist, I don't care, you know. Nourish these seeds with your virtue, your goodness, your clarity, your wisdom, your kindness, your perseverance. Never give up on you or anyone else. Okay? Kewadi nyududag lama sange drugyone drowa chikyang malupa dei sala kupasho jam chob sem chob rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyuchig ke panyam pa me payam gong ne gong du ba sho. And maybe never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious teachers, with faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness. May their full inspiration flow into our hearts. And may His Holiness the Dalai Lama and anybody practicing virtue, our teachers, anybody practicing virtue on this planet, live long lives. We need them badly. Okay, thanks everyone.